Yeah, it's windy here, Howard, but still not paradise.
You don't have a beach umbrella though to keep intact.
Yeah.
So I've got some problems with this.
First world problems.
So
right.
just one technical issue. It seems like when I go to look at my agenda on this iPad I'm using, I must go off screen, which is fine, except for when I read the Brown Act notice. So I might have to read it, or you can read it for me. That's one item where I might struggle because I only got the agenda after I was already here, so I don't have a printed out version that I can use. So if I go to look at it, it sounds to me like I may go off video, but I might just be poking over to make sure I can read the agenda.
Okay, either way.
Okay.
I can go ahead. Yeah, we're recording, so you can go ahead and call it to motion. Or call sorry.
Okay. We're hereby calling to order the City of Burlingame Traffic Safety and Parking Commission meeting for April 8th, 2021. Mr. Wong, did you have some notes for the public before we proceed?
Sure. The first note is tonight's meeting is on a Zoom webinar format. If members of the public wish to participate, they can use the chat feature on the bottom of the screen, as well as they can raise their hand and then we'll allow them to speak. The time limit set by the chair. And then the last one is you may send comments to an email address, publiccomment@burlingame.org, and then we'll periodically check that to make sure if there's anything on there and then make sure those are read. And we'll allow for probably like 3 minutes of that, but again, chair's discretion. And
okay. Thank you. So with that, we can proceed to the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't have my family's flag with us,
all right.
or any of my flag holders, so I'm going to rely on the city to present the flag while
we can do that as well. Miss Brewer has a flag.
There we go. Very nice.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so shall we proceed? Mr. Wong, can you lead us?
Sure.
Stand up here.
Maybe
doesn't make for good video.
The chair, defer to our newest commissioner.
Yes, great idea. Well, I'd also let me just say real quickly that I'd like to welcome our new commissioner. We're very pleased to have you here. One of our traditions is the new commissioner always leads us in the pledge. And a word of advice. As soon as after you've said I pledge allegiance, the rest takes care of itself. So don't sweat it. Okay.
Thank you so much. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands,
and to the republic for which it stands.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
I completed my first task. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Usually, when we're in person, you're less left hanging because the whole group goes, but over Zoom it doesn't work quite as well. so it's a little tougher on you and Commissioner Lee than it's been on the rest of us. But don't worry, it's not every meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Not every meeting we do that to you. So with that, let's proceed to the roll call.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Rebellos?
Here.
Commissioner Lee?
Here.
Commissioner Israelit?
Here.
Vice Chair Martos?
Here.
Chair Wetton?
Here. Okay. With all present, it's nice. We have a 5-commissioner contingent for the first time in a few months, which is very nice. So with all present, we can proceed to reviewing and approving the minutes for last month. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Does anyone have any further comments?
I did send a comment out. Were the minutes corrected?
Through the chair, we did re-review that and we found that that's the statement that was made. So we will leave it, but we will work to have that verbiage changed or correct usage of that verbiage on future meetings.
Thank you.
Okay, were there any other comments to the minutes? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to
I-
approve the minutes.
I second that
Okay,
motion.
all in favor of approving the minutes from March? And sorry, before anyone says anything, because of Zoom, we have to take roll calls for these. So can we please proceed with the roll call in favor of the motion or voting on the motion by Commissioner Martos?
Commissioner Rebellos,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Israelit,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martos,
Aye.
Chair
Through the
Whitten.
chair, before we finalize that, just as formality, I think our new Commissioner Rebellos, I think he might have to abstain on this because he wasn't in attendance of that. Just a formality.
So I have been advised in the past that you don't necessarily, most people do abstain when they haven't been present to the meeting, typically. But actually you don't have to. At least that is advice I've received in the past. So I'm not inclined to do anything about that at this point.
We're fine either way.
So let me just complete. I also vote in favor, and the motion carries 5-0 to 0. And I did bring my gavel. So,
All right.
so with that, we can proceed to public comment. I have a notice I have to read. So my video may go out for just a second while I read the notice. Andy, just let me know. I'll just confirm you can hear me.
Okay.
So you can't see me, but can you hear me?
Correct. Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'll read this notice and I'll come right back to the video. Members of the public may speak on any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future commission agenda may do so during this public comment period. The Ralph M. Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. The provision of a name, address, or other identifying information is optional. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. The commission chair may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Okay, I am back on video. Is there anyone here, Mr. Wong, who does wish to share a public comment for something that's not on the agenda?
And from Ms. Brewer, there are no public comments.
Okay.
I don't see
Okay.
any hands raised.
We'll close the public comment period and move on to the BPAC report. Is there anybody here tonight from BPAC who wishes to weigh in on anything or share any updates, comments from progress in their meetings?
Ms. Beatty has raised her hand for this, so she
Okay.
is.
Hi, TSBC. I don't have much of an update, but I did want to share that at BPAC, we are primarily focused on the priorities that have emerged from the bike ped plan. So our main goal right now is to make sure that the highest priority projects are finding a home / we're understanding where they're prioritized in the budget and which projects can move forward this year. So most of our discussions are around, either the upcoming California Drive project or the neighborhood bike boulevard or other pedestrian enhancements. And we also did want to thank the city for painting the crosswalk at Ray and Balboa next to Lincoln Elementary and Ray Park. It looks great, and that's a great addition to the city.
That's great to hear. And I'll just note that I know we were hoping to do a joint TSBC BPAC meeting in the very near future. In fact, we were hoping maybe to have done it by now. I think because of the urgency around what we're talking about tonight going to council, we pushed it, but that is something we hope we're all able to convene and do very soon. And we look forward to engaging directly with the members of the BPAC on priorities for what we think should be prioritized in that bike ped master plan. Okay. Do we have any other comments on BPAC issues? If not, I'll close this and move on to item 6B.
All
Okay.
right.
Not hearing anything. Let's move on to item 6B,
All right.
which is the Chapin Green
Sure.
Streets project.
Thank you, Chair Whedon. Chapin Avenue Green Street update for you guys tonight. The commission has seen this project before, where we showed some concepts, and those concepts were refined based on some of the comments, and they were put out to the public for some additional outreach. And Ms. Jennifer Lee, our environmental regulatory compliance manager, will be taking over this one. It's her project to go. So I'll let her, with further ado, she can take over.
Thank you, Andy. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Jennifer Lee. As Andy had mentioned, I am the environmental regulatory compliance manager for the city. And thank you for the opportunity to present an update on the Chapin Avenue feasibility study with you this evening. Joined with me this evening are the consultants I have for this project, Jeff Peterson and Parker King from Woolsey Ham, who will be giving this presentation. And with that, I will share my screen, if I can. Oh, bless you.
Thank you. I have to find the mute button on this.
Can I share this screen, host? Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right. Does everyone see that?
There's a little lag, but it'll come. There we go.
Is it
All right.
showing? All right. Yes. Thank you. Go ahead, Parker. Take it away.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. And thank you all for allowing us to come present our project this evening. Like Jennifer mentioned, my name is Parker King. I'm a civil engineer with Woolsey Ham. And I'm also joined by Jeff Peterson, who's the principal engineer in our office. We've been working with Jennifer at the city alongside our sub-consultants, Calendar Associates and TJKM, to develop a feasibility study for Chapin Avenue between the intersections of El Camino Real and Primrose Road. Next slide, please. So a little bit of background on the project and the reason kind of why this project started to begin with. The city has identified Chapin Avenue in the Burlingame General Plan, the Downtown Specific Plan, the Bike and Ped Master Plan, as a great option to improve stormwater infrastructure, pedestrian and bicycle safety, and traffic flow. On top of that, the San Mateo County Stormwater Resource Plan identified Chapin as a priority Green Street development project to reduce stormwater and pollutant runoff. That was a report county-wide that identified a number of projects. And then one of the big determining factors behind why Chapin was identified in all of these plans is due to the wide right-of-way on the street. I'm sure you guys have driven or walked by or on Chapin and noticed how wide the lanes are, and that it offers a perfect place to improve and use that width more efficiently in an effort to provide green infrastructure, community spaces, and better traffic safety. Next slide, please, Jennifer. So here's a visual of kind of where we are with the project and our timeline for finishing the feasibility study. Some of you may remember that, as Andy mentioned, Jennifer came to present this project while we were still in the early stages back in July of last year. And we got some great feedback that helped us develop and hone the alternatives that you'll see tonight. After this meeting, we'll follow up with another presentation with City Council before finalizing our feasibility study with a hopefully supported alternative. Next slide, please. So our goal for this meeting is to update you on the progress of the project since the last time we presented, as well as getting your feedback on the alternatives that we've developed since then. The key topics that have been common theme throughout the public outreach stages of the project are green infrastructure, community spaces and village character, pedestrian access and safety, vehicular access and parking, and bicycle access and safety. Next slide, please. So here's a bird's eye view of alternative 1. It features a planted median with street trees, bulb outs for bioretention and pedestrian crossings, a mid-block pedestrian crossing, class 3 shared bike lanes, an optional all-way stop at Primrose, and 78 total parking stalls. And then we'll be able to get back to these bird's eye views and whatnot later, so we can take a closer look. Let's see. Okay, this is alternative 2, bird's eye view. It features a lot of the same things, street trees, bulb outs for bioretention and pedestrian crossings, a mid-block crossing, class 3 bike lanes, an optional all-way stop at Primrose, and 89 total parking stalls. The big difference here, obviously, as you can see closer to Primrose, is the parking median with the street trees. Next slide, please. So one of the main goals of this project, irregardless of the alternative that's chosen, is stormwater quality. By increasing the amount of landscaping and using green infrastructure like bioretention planters, we can help lessen the pollutants that wash off our streets and into the bay. Both alternatives provide added green spaces compared to the existing condition, but alternative 1 provides more total area. Tree plantings are also pretty comparable in both alternatives. Next one, please. So here's a side-by-side comparison looking from the Primrose intersection. It shows the various aspects of the green infrastructure that I just talked about and community spaces that we've been discussing and how they fit in with the street. Next one. Many of the residents that we discussed this project with envision Chapin as an extension of downtown with a lot of potential for community spaces and pedestrian access. We also heard pretty often that pedestrian safety was a priority. So we included, like I mentioned, the bulb outs for pedestrian crossings or shortening them, including a mid-block crossing to limit the jaywalking, and improved lighting to not only make pedestrians safer, but also make a better connection to Burlingame Avenue in character. Next slide, please. So here's a side-by-side comparison of kind of the mid-block where we can see the bulb outs, the bioretention, the shortened crossings, and the planted median with also the parking median for option 2. Next slide, please. So throughout our public outreach, parking has been probably the hottest topic that keeps coming up. Both options end up in a net loss of parking for reasons that we'll show in a future slide, but alternative 2 definitely aims to maximize the amount of parking we can get out of the street. We found during our surveys that most respondents were not using Chapin Avenue for biking, but because it is a dedicated bike route according to the city's plan, we're proposing to add class 3 bike lanes, which use sharrows on both of the alternatives. Let's see, next slide, please. So here's a side-by-side comparison from the opposite end, El Camino Real. We can see the nose-in angled parking, similar to what's there now, the shared bicycle route, the center lane that will be used for turning movements, as well as delivery loading for things like Molly Stones. Next slide, please. So now that we've gone over the individual aspects, we can kind of take another look at the bird's eye view of each alternative and kind of put those things together. So we've got the shortened pedestrian crossings at the mid block, as well as at each intersection. We've got increased green infrastructure with street trees, a common theme throughout with landscaping, and then added community spaces throughout. And next slide, please. So here we've got the two main cross sections that you'll find on alternative 1. To the left is closer to El Camino Real, where we have the turn lane / delivery zone, as well as the 2 drive aisles and the angled parking with the sidewalks. Then to the right is closer to the Primrose intersection. We've got the planted median, as well as more of the green spaces. Next slide, please. Here we go with the bird's eye view again with alternative 2. We can see the infrastructure that we've been discussing before. We've got a lot of the same benefits that I was just talking about with alternative 1, but obviously the big change is the parking median with pedestrian access. There's still a good amount of green spaces, but you'll see in future slides how they compare. Next slide, please. And then here you've got the cross sections again. I would say the cross section at El Camino is identical, whereas to the right, where you get closer to Primrose, you've obviously got that parking median with the pedestrian access. So you've got 2 sides of parking on the southbound lane of Chapin. Next slide, please. So here you've got the parking impacts that I was talking about earlier, and the reason why we are losing net parking counts in both alternatives is due to the non-standard orientations in the existing condition. You've got 2 different types of angled parking, which once we improve the street, we'll need to provide uniform stalls. And also, obviously, we're trying to utilize some of the width of the street for other benefits like the community spaces, the medians, the traffic calming measures, the green spaces. Next slide, please. And then here we've got a similar comparison for green space. As you can see in the existing condition, that the trees are more sparse. They're not necessarily themed or interconnected. And then you've got the bioretention bulb outs, and you've got the planted medians in both conditions. Next slide, please, Jennifer. And here we go with just kind of a summary table of what I've been discussing in the last 2 slides, where we're comparing the existing conditions to both the alternatives when it comes to parking, as well as landscape areas. Yeah, next slide, please. And then here we can discuss the kind of feedback we got from our latest public outreach, which was a survey where we got 166 responses, which was really great. That was from residents, business owners, and anyone else who got the link. Some big takeaways from those responses are included here. We received 93 new engagements from people who hadn't yet been a part of the previous outreach efforts. And then one of the options in alternative 2 during the survey stage was reverse angled parking, which is a newer and growing parking alternative, but it obviously didn't receive glowing feedback. So we ended up updating our alternative 2. I guess really that option was an option in both cases, alternative 1 and 2. I don't think it came across that way, so we just ended up going with normally angled parking in both options. Next are the responses on the topic of biking and the reason why we ended up going with the class 3 Sharrows. while many of the respondents do not bike on Chapin, we feel that the improvements we're offering will still increase the safety for those that do. And then lastly, we asked the respondents to choose an alternative that they preferred. We found that 66% of respondents chose option 1, most of them citing that the added green infrastructure was more appealing to them. And then next slide. And then this is just back to kind of a comparison of alternatives 1 and 2. I put this one as the last slide for discussion purposes. I'm sure there are going to be questions, and so we can kind of point to these as we go through them. So does anyone have any questions? I saw some text popping up. I don't know how you guys treat that.
So, Mr. Wong, I can't see the text coming in or who's got questions, but I'm happy to allow members of the public to comment before the commissioners proceed to ask questions and give their comments.
Through the chair, the text that popped up are actually for the next item. We were just kind of.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that one. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So then we should proceed then. Mr. Rebelos, again, welcome. And I should have probably done a little more at the top of the meeting to welcome you. I typically, I typically let the newest commissioner lead the questions, and then we sort of proceed, and then the vice chair and the chair go last. So
Okay.
that means you get to lead off the questions. You don't necessarily get one bite at the apple. If we get through all our questions and answers and you have more, you will be able to ask it. So don't feel compelled if you want to hang back.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually very impressed with this. Mike, I'm a little surprised that option 1, alternative 1, was favored by 66% of those surveyed, and I think maybe I missed something. How wide is that median in alternative 1? And actually, it's 2 questions. How wide is that median, and do you anticipate that people will utilize it for, socializing or sitting or something?
So actually, first, let me get to kind of what you alluded to first, which was your surprise for the strong response to alternative 1. And I do want to throw a caveat. I alluded to it when we were talking about, when I was talking earlier, but in the survey, our alternative 2 showed a reverse angle parking option. And while we showed in the slides that this was an option, either or, we could have regular angled parking or reverse angle, we showed it on alternative 2, and that got a number of negative responses. So I feel that maybe slightly there was a negative for alternative 2 because of that angled parking, which wasn't actually the only option for alternative 2. So that's just a quick response to your initial. And then to answer your actual question, the median in the center is 11 feet wide. We don't anticipate it being used for community spaces necessarily, just because it's right in between the traffic. But there is safe crossings at the mid-block crossing if the city decides that they want to add some sort of community space there.
And then just real quickly, with alternative 2, it looks like from actually, I know the answer, so I'm not going to ask that question. And then there's 3 lanes at the El Camino to exit Chapin. And then, so at my goodness, it's Primrose. That's Primrose, right?
Primrose, yes.
Yes. So that's just 1 lane entering and 1 lane exiting, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And the stop sign, I've thought that I heard you say that the stop sign was optional.
Yeah, and I should have touched on that too. So there is a stop sign, obviously, at the intersection if you're coming from Chapin, but right now it's only a single stop. Whereas a lot of feedback that we received from the public was the desire to at least study the alternative of creating that always stop at that intersection. We did do that. We had our traffic engineering consultant study it. They ended up recommending to add the always stop, but so I guess the alternative 1 and 2 have that as an option.
Okay, I think that's all I have for the moment.
Okay, great. Commissioner Lee, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you. How far is the crossing distance at El Camino and Chapin? How far do the pedestrians have to walk? It looks like it's 4.5 lanes. Is that over 60 feet?
That is 47-ish feet.
Okay, I can live with that. Thank you. My next question is an alternative 1. It appears that parked cars will be driving over the center mid-block crosswalk as they pull out. Is that correct? That they would be driving backward over the crosswalk?
When they're backing up. Yeah, currently they have probably just enough space to back up and not hit it. But you're right, that is something that we'll have to look at when we get into actual design of
Yeah, it looks like both legs of the crosswalk would be invaded by drivers backing up onto the crosswalk, an alternative 1. Next question is over at Chapin and Primrose. Is that going to be a 3-way stop then?
That's an option in both alternatives, yes. The option to add an always stop in each direction.
Okay, and then my other question is the handicap ramps there at Chapin and Primrose. Looks like you have one that's bi-directional. I think having 2, one going forward and then one going to each direction. Considering the volume of pedestrians in that area and strollers kind of have to roll out into the street and then make their turn. Lots of strollers are there. And considering the volume, I think it'd be wisest in either alternative to have 2 directional handicap ramps. And lastly, are pedestrians able to cross at the south leg of Primrose there, or only at the north leg? Can we cross over the street there at the south end to cross what is that, Primrose from Chapin?
That's a great question. I actually think, and this is just off the top of my head, I think there's a driveway
on the other side
the street that's on the south side that's making it so that there can't be a crosswalk, but
Okay.
I can't remember if it's right out of the way or not. I'll have to look at that.
All right, my last thing, I noticed when you showed the lighting, can we go back and show the street lights? I noticed that they were not in the position that is the most helpful to the crosswalks. Can we go back to that slide possibly? Somewhere you showed street lights.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like the street view. No, it was like the human scale view.
Yeah, it'll be,
All right, this one.
there you go.
Yeah. So for example, I don't see a new street light here on the left side of the landing zone.
Sure.
And ditto on alternative 2. And then for pedestrian, that street light really ought to be way up there if there's closer to the crosswalk so that the pedestrians are lit up in the crosswalk at night. And same with alternative 2, just to take a lot more care of how the crosswalks are lit up. And they need to focus the light on the front of the body of the pedestrian, not just overhead, because then the rest of you is dark. The body needs to be lit up. So for example, both alternatives, see the lower lamp on the right? Like you have the upper one for the motor vehicles, it appears. That lower one is the one that needs to be shining on the pedestrian's body, so you see their clothing lit up at night. And it also is far more comfortable for a pedestrian to have lower lighting. It's much cozier when you're walking at night to have down low lighting instead of up high. So I would like more care on the lighting and where they are. I mean, this might have just been photoshopped in because it looks good, but there aren't lights, you know, like on that landing zone at El Camino. Clearly you need a street light there. I mean, a pedestrian crossing light. Anyway, that's my questions. Would those be looked at more thoroughly, the lighting?
Yeah, absolutely. Once we get into actual real design, once we've chosen the alternative that we're going to go forward with, then we'll be able to get into real design of the street, and lighting studies are something that definitely we take into consideration.
Okay, so in looking at it, I liked the alternative 2 for a couple of reasons. One is you don't have cars backing up over a crosswalk going in both directions. And the other reason is I definitely prefer the crossing at Primrose, that end, having a much safer, much more comfortable way to cross at that end. The larger the center divide, and I think having improved parking with that is better too. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your feedback.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Israelit, do you have comments or questions?
I do. First of all, thank you for such a wonderful presentation. It's really made this easy to visualize both of these alternatives and compare them. So I really appreciate the effort that went into this. I also would like to say that while I haven't given much thought to Chapin in the 13 years I've lived in Burlingame, it's because it's just so unremarkable and an open space. And I think this is going to be a wonderful change and a great addition, especially because of the ecologic reasons. Looking at the two designs, I have to agree with the general population. I definitely prefer alternative 1 for several reasons. One is, right now Chapin is kind of a wasteland. It's kind of ugly, kind of industrial. And the amount of green space, both planted and trees that you showed is I think if I recall, is at least 20% more with alternative 1. So not only is it, data-driven larger amount of space, but also from a visual standpoint, having one big long block going down the second half of the street is a much more valuable way to have your green space than to have little slivers of it kind of cutting around the different areas of the median angled parking, in my opinion. Plus some of that then needs to require a sidewalk because people are exiting in the middle of the street, so that where we could only have pure green space in alternative 1, you need to take some of that away to have a sidewalk running that entire length in alternative 2. And lastly, I don't think, well, actually, this is kind of 2 points. I don't think that the loss of 10 or maybe it was 11 parking spaces is really a big deal for Chapin. We've always found that this is, an underutilized area of parking. There's, almost never completely parked up except for weekend nights. So I'm not super worried about losing those spots when we're gaining so very much by doing this project. And I also wanted to just say that with alternative 2, that sort of zigzag reverse in, or even if we change it to nose in parking, I think is slightly confusing. I think it's going to I feel that is not quite as safe, and I can't really say, exactly why. It's not really a specific data point, but I do think that there's a lot to pay attention to in that if you're driving down the street, and Chapin specifically, in alternative 2, you have cars to the right, you have cars in the middle, you're going to have pedestrians. And I just feel alternative 1 is more simple, less likely to be confusing to people unfamiliar with the area. I mean, I just hands down prefer alternative 1 for all those reasons. But thank you. I'm excited about this project now.
Great. Thanks so much for your feedback.
Commissioner Israelit, I hate to jump in because I'm going to go to Commissioner Martos very soon, but you said something in your comments about we can spare 11 or 12 parking spaces, but I just want to clarify, alternative 2 actually takes out significantly more parking spaces than that, right? Like we lose 11 or 12 in alternative 2, right? But alternative 1, we lose, I think, 22, right?
I was just comparing alternative 1 to alternative 2. There's 11,
I got
difference of 11 spots. I mean, we're going to lose parking
got
spots with either. I'm just comparing, 1 to 2.
Got it. Okay, I just wanted to clarify, make sure we were all on the same page on the numbers. Okay, well then I'll yield to Vice Chair Martos to go with his comments and questions.
Thanks, Chair Wetton. I had some questions. So I was wondering the median, let's see, can you go to the image that shows the merchants that will be affected by that median? Right now, there's no median, and people can turn left into, let's see, I can't see the names of the merchants there. I think I saw Fidelity and maybe Coldwell Banker. Go to the next slide.
I think there's 2 real estate agencies, Vice Chair
There's one of
Martos
the
there.
slides that had the names of the merchants on there. So I was wondering, so there are going to be some merchants that will be affected by no left turn because the median is there in both alternatives. And I was wondering what their feedback was. You said you got feedback from the community as well as the merchants. So do you recall what their feedback was, if they had any concerns?
Yeah, you're right, actually. So we did do a presentation at DBID earlier on in the process. I don't recall getting feedback specifically about what you're asking. A lot of their feedback was about parking specifically.
Okay, so their bigger concern was with parking.
Yes.
Slide 19 says Commissioner Israelit. Has the names of merchants on it. I thought I saw it in one of your slides. Are you on slide 19?
Yeah, that's slide.
Mr. King? Okay. At any rate, so that's fine. So that I guess it doesn't matter who the merchants are if they, as a group, didn't have any concerns about the no left turn into their driveways. I was wondering then how far, well, I guess how far doesn't matter, but I could see people traveling west, wanting to get to a business on the east side, making a U-turn after the crosswalk. So will that be no U-turn there, or are U-turns be allowed at that point?
Yeah, the intention is to not allow the U-turns.
Okay.
And to allow just the left turns into the driveways.
Okay, and so then if someone, say I'm going westbound and I want to get to Fidelity, which is on, and you had it on both sides, but I don't think they're on both sides. I think they're just on the south side of Chapin. If I want to get to that Fidelity office on the south side of Chapin, what do I do? Where do I make my U-turn to get to the eastbound lane? So
That's a great-
you understand my question?
Totally. I
Okay.
totally understand your question. I don't know that I have an answer for you other than, I guess what I would do is probably pull into a driveway and turn around in a stall or something like that. But I don't know if that's the answer you're looking.
No, well, so what I'm wondering is there any place on that street to make a U-turn?
No, there isn't. There is
Okay.
not.
So
So if I think I have the floor unless you want to interrupt, Chair.
no. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thank
John,
you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
All right. Okay. So then what's the recommendation from Mr. Wong or from the consultants if I want to turn around and go, if I'm headed westbound, I want to go eastbound, or I want to get onto one of the merchants on the eastbound side behind the median?
Through the chair,
Sure.
and I may actually ask.
Well, I'm
Sergeant
not the chair.
Yeah. Please proceed. Please proceed.
I may ask Sergeant Perna to jump in on this, but I believe this is a central business district and U-turns are not allowed in this area. That being said, people do make them, but legally they are not able, they should not be making them. But if Sergeant Perna wants to jump in, if he has that, or he can look it up, but and
Mr. Wong, that was actually Vice Chair Martos. That was what I was actually tempted to interrupt you about too. Is my recollection when we looked at the traffic codes years ago is that U-turns on Chapin are now illegal. But I think Vice Chair Martos, I'll steer it back to your question, which is I think a very, very good one.
Okay.
Which is if
So
you
I
have people.
I had more to add.
Okay.
If I still have the floor.
Please.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So then, can you flip the chart back to alternative 1? Okay. All right. And then go back to alternative 2. That's what I thought. All right. So what I would do if I'm traveling and I'm going westbound on Chapin and I want to get to my Fidelity office on the south side of that street, what I would do is I would park in one of those stalls in the median, and then I would jaywalk right across the street to Fidelity. Now, so that I'm not jaywalking, was it considered to possibly put another crosswalk mid-block where that zigzag is, so that someone can get to the other side safely in a crosswalk? Did the consultants, Mr. Parker, did you consider that?
We did not. I guess one thing I would add is the volume of driveways in that location may make it difficult to fit a crosswalk in, but we felt that the feedback was to put a mid-block crossing, so we put it at, like we said, the mid-block, so that it might get used by more people in total.
I understand that, but I'm saying, so right at that zigzag is where the Fidelity office is. And I'm headed westbound on Chapin. And I want to get to my Fidelity office. There's nowhere on that street for me to make a U-turn. So what I would do is I would park in one of those angled slots right at that zigzag, and I'd walk across the street. It'd be safer if I walked through a crosswalk across the street. Maybe a very short crosswalk. Actually, it's probably about the same size as the one mid-block. So that I don't have to walk all the way down mid-block across the street and then come back down to where that zigzag is in the median. Okay, so I think I beat that horse to death. That's my concern on that one. I will. I too was surprised that the community preferred option 1. I think Commissioner Lee pointed out another good another concern with alternative one and backing out of those spots into the crosswalk. And the other thing I see is, the zigzag could create a little bit more traffic calming than the wide open, than the median, just solid right down the middle. I think, that I would probably drive a little bit slower with the configuration in alternative 2. And then the last thing I'll say, and Commissioner Wetton or Chair Wetton and I have studied this extensively and brought this back to the commission a number of times, is downtown parking. It's a big problem. It's a very big problem on Fridays, on Thursdays, on Saturdays. So while we're giving up some parking here, alternative 2, we drop about 12 spots. It's better than dropping 21 spots. So for those reasons, I'm in favor of alternative 2, with the consideration that we look at possibly putting another crosswalk at that zigzag in the median. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Martos. And sorry about the interruptions. So I don't have any questions. I think all the questions asked were excellent ones. I have to say, I am troubled by the loss of parking. I'm troubled even by the lower loss of parking of 12 spots. And to put this in context, Vice Chair Martos noted that we've been severely constrained with lunchtime parking, in particular on Thursdays and Fridays, pre-COVID. I don't know if those constraints will return post-COVID. I think no one knows, but if they do, that's an issue. I think even with that, maybe we could spare 12 spaces, but then I want to layer in the discussions around taking out, I think it's lot E, to create a town square. It's either lot J, or maybe it's lot J, to create a town square. That'll mean the loss of over 100 spaces. And there's even discussion about letting some of the downtown businesses keep their parklets, which would create further losses of spaces. So, my view is that over time, we will reduce the spaces in the downtown. I think that's a good plan, but I think if we have big plans to do it in our town center, which I like, then we have to be thoughtful about not giving up too much parking on the perimeter, which is what Chapin is. And I would also add, nothing is more dangerous to pedestrians than a bunch of cars circling because they can't find a spot. And I would add that I'm really, really concerned about the part of the discussion that Vice Chair Martos surfaced here about not being able to make left turns into some of the businesses. I guess I do have one question. This mid-Chapin crosswalk, is that in front of Chase? Is that in front of the bank? Is that Chase?
Yes.
Okay. So someone going to Chase couldn't enter the Chase parking lot coming from El Camino. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see. Oh, sorry, this is blocking. The driveway is right here.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to, the reason I'm pointing that out is Chase, like some of these businesses, have parking for their customers. That if the customer can't get there, you're neutralizing, and now you're putting more cars on Chapin, right? So if I'm going to Chase, maybe I'm planning ahead and I'm going up Burlingame Avenue and making a left on Primrose, and I'm driving around the downtown now rather than going up Chapin to get to Chase. I'm doing a circular route. and adding to the downtown traffic because I want to be able to park in the Chase lot, or just as likely, I'm not thinking ahead. And I realize I can't get to the Chase lot and now I'm parking on the street on Chapin, whereas I wouldn't have otherwise. And now maybe I'm crossing Chapin, whereas I wouldn't have otherwise. And those spots that Chase offers up for its customers are now not being utilized and being shifted now onto Chapin. So I find that kind of troubling because I think it might exacerbate circling and pedestrian issues even further. So, I don't know where that leaves me, but I'm kind of lukewarm about both these plans. I think, and again, I think it's bad. It's one thing to give up the 12 spaces. Like I said, I think it's fair to say that particularly the west side of Chapin isn't heavily utilized, except, we did see pre-COVID Thursday, Friday lunchtimes. It would be mostly utilized. And if we're giving up spaces in the downtown, it could be entirely utilized. But then, like I would add, I'm really worried about neutralizing people's ability to get into these businesses and use those parking lots. And it seems to be happening, and there seems to be a couple severe cases of that in this plan. So I don't know if you have any response to that, or and if not, I could allow other commissioners to weigh in. I'm not sure I support either of these alternatives, but if I had to, I probably would go with alternative 2. But at this point, I'm really kind of troubled by some of by that design that kind of makes it impossible to get into some of these businesses' parking lots.
Understood.
And what I think, let me just I'll say this and then I'll shut up. Yeah, what one thing I do think is, at least in the near term, I think what'll happen is you'll have people surprised that they can't make this left turn, and notwithstanding the fact that it's illegal and unsafe, you're going to see people making all kinds of crazy U-turns. I suspect it'll go long into the future where people will arrive and be like, I can't get over to the other side of the street, and they're going to start trying to make left U-turns on Primrose, which is illegal and unsafe. Okay, I'll yield the floor. Sorry. I think the consultant was going to respond.
I didn't have a specific response. I just wanted to thank you for your feedback. I thought it was very helpful.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and through the chair and just say we will certainly take these comments back and discuss them amongst our team, including our traffic engineer, and kick them around and get their opinions. We have a traffic engineer on board, and we'll certainly bounce off some of these ideas and get their responses. And so we'll definitely take your comments to heart and talk with city staff as well as our extended team, and then we will come up with responses in regard to the left turns and U-turns and things like that. So we really appreciate those comments, and it gives us something to chew on here and think about.
Thank you. And let me say for the record, I'm aware of the storm drain issues. I think we do need to do something here around the storm water. I love seeing, I would love to see more greenery on Chapin. I realize Chapin could use some thoughtful assistance, but I don't want to see a lot of frustrated drivers who are circling and doing illegal things because they fundamentally can't get to businesses that they could easily get to today. So with that, I'll ask if any of the commissioners other commissioners want a second bite of the apple, want to comment further. It's hard to do. I apologize. I'm trying to see if I could see raised hands. Now I can. Okay. So I see raised hands for all the commissioners. I guess I'll start with Commissioner Lee and then I'll proceed in the same order.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just going back to the inability to access the parking, say at Fidelity, I think as a driver, you have a few choices. One is you just park across the street and walk across to get to Fidelity. Or, the first time you do it, you realize, oops, I came at it the wrong way. And then the next time you drive over there, if you want to use the Fidelity parking lot, then that would, you would pre-plan your trip, that you wouldn't have to make the U-turn. The other thing is I don't see any handicap parking stalls. I guess that's to be designed later, but I do want to be sure we have them at both ends of the street, not just one. And then the other thing was, since the merchant's biggest care wasn't, can they access my driveway? It really was about the quantity of parking that that definitely leans me toward alternative 2, in addition to it having more parking and the crossing at Primrose is safer for pedestrians. So, and I like the idea of having a center greenery with center trees. I think having the road narrowed like that does slow down drivers, and you take more care when it's like that. And I don't think BPAC was that interested in having sharrows on the street. It's not one of their major thoroughfares, so I don't think they mind either way. Whatever's slower for cars is better for bicyclists. So alternative 2 would probably slow down cars more on the street. So I think that's what they preferred today in the meeting. And they did endorse alternative 2, BPAC tonight. Thank you.
Okay. I'll proceed to Commissioner Israelit, who has her hand up. Well, actually, Commissioner Rebelos, I think you were just slow to get your hand up. So if I'm going to stick with the order, I'm already out of it a little bit. I'll let you go.
Thank you. So to address the left turn concern, that is, in my opinion, a legitimate concern. I do prefer number 2. The reason I like 2, one of the main reasons, other than there's a little more parking, I actually think visually it's a little bit more appealing. And having lived almost 2 decades ago in the city on Dolores Street, I think most people are familiar with Dolores. It has that median. It's beautiful when you're driving, but it serves basically no purpose socially. So what I like about this is if you're walking along Chapin, it's a nice road to walk along, and you have the mid-block crosswalk, and you can walk onto that median, and then you can continue crossing the road at Primrose. So you're getting halfway across. And then I also like the fact that the center median is being utilized for something. There's activity there. That's attractive to me. As for the left turns, I do think people will get used to it. I know that since the opening of the traffic circle, I used to always approach downtown from El Camino, and now with the traffic circle, I almost always approach downtown from California. And I end up turning, in there and coming into Chapin and parking along there somewhere. But I think, there's going to be a window of construction where it's going to become obvious to people that they're going to have to approach their destination perhaps from a different direction. So I think that needs to be accounted for. But at the end of the day, I'm very fond of this one, and but I do hear the concerns about the parking at lunchtime. I mean, I've experienced that myself, and but I think that this is a very attractive. I prefer to be able to walk than to find parking, personally. So I really am in favor of this alternative 2.
Okay, Commissioner Israelit. you had your hand up.
Yeah, so when we first started talking about this project, I remember last summer or whatever, I had said, you know, the problem with having this kind of median strip was that you wouldn't be able to turn left into businesses. So, so I do remember sort of broaching that subject, and I think that's one of the reasons why we ended up just doing a median strip on half of the block. And if I'm correct, I hear what you're saying. Like, you know, what if people can't get into the parking lot at the real estate agent, so they park on the street instead? Or what if they, you know, feel like they're going to do dangerous 3-point turns in crowded parking lots so they can get on the other side or whatever? But the only, I mean, what I understood is that we were giving up that particular, access so that we could have more narrow lanes for slowing traffic and making it safer for pedestrians, and so that we could add greenery and have better drainage and environmentally more friendly. The only thing I can think of, and I'm not an engineer, obviously, but to solve this problem in a different way might be to have little islands of median strip, maybe 6 or something, that still had cut throughs where you could turn left to get to the other side of the street. And I don't know what that would look like or if that would even work. So I feel like we either have to live with the fact that for half the block, you can't turn left into the businesses on the other side of the street in exchange for pedestrian safety and better drainage and more greenery, or come up with another plan that has mini islands, mini median islands, with more frequent areas to cross the street, I guess. And then I do just, it sounds like right now, maybe I'm one of the few that's still leaning toward alternative 1 if we do move forward with one of these 2 options. But, even though there is a sidewalk in that median strip of option 2, I don't think that that's going to be necessarily an attractive, comfortable place to walk, because it's still, cars are parked there, cars are going to be pulling in and out. So to me, I still feel like that is not really going to be used in a social way, and that we are giving up, a good deal of greenery to have the sidewalk there and to have it split up that way. So I still would prefer option 1, with the caveat also, as Commissioner Lee said, to just ensure that those spots don't back up and obviously into the crosswalk. That's it.
Okay, Vice Chair Martos, you had your hand up.
Yeah, let me lower my hand. Here we go. All right, I'm unmuted. So I one go back on the crosswalk potential of adding a crosswalk at that zigzag. If Commissioner Lee brought up a good point, as you back out of that spot, if there's a crosswalk, say on right at the zigzag on the south side of the street, and a crosswalk right at the zigzag, the entrance to the zigzag on the north side of the street, then as people back out, they're going to back into the crosswalks. So if you all want to consider my proposal, if you change the zigzag the other way, then when people back out of the spots, they're not going to back into the crosswalk. So that was the only thing I wanted to add. And that would facilitate people parking and at that median and walking across the street. And when they back out of their parking spot, they wouldn't be backing into a crosswalk. So that's more for the consultants to chew on and Mr. Wong. That's all I had. Does that make sense? Mr. King, what I just described, or Mr. Peterson?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Well, I think the only thing I leave with is, I do think you should talk to the specific businesses that are going to be impacted here, because I think the impact is going to be significant. I take the point that people going to these businesses will just have to plan accordingly. I think that will create more traffic in the downtown it's going to create you're creating longer driving routes for people going to these businesses. Otherwise, you are going to push parking onto Chapin, which is, I think, something that we don't want. But I do agree that we should be doing something here. I think I know we need the drainage improvement, and I think the greenery is welcome. I was made aware while people were talking that there was people who wanted to give public comment that somehow didn't get the opportunity at the top. So I'll open the floor for public comment if anybody feels they didn't have a chance to.
Sure. Thanks, Chair Webb. I wanted to jump in. We had them folks come in after. We have Miss Madeline Frechette. I believe
Great.
she had her hand up first.
Okay.
So,
Ms. Frechette, please proceed.
Hi, thanks. So my name is Madeline. I'm a resident of Burlingame. And I'm one of those rare people where, like, I don't own a car. I get around solely by public transportation and by foot and on bike. And I actually take Chapin extremely often, and not because I want to. It's actually because it's only one of two ways that I can get home when I'm coming from the west side of El Camino. And it's the more convenient option of, there's really only two options. And this route is particularly hairy on a bike because it is so wide. So I'm happy that, this project is being prioritized. And I really can't emphasize enough how alternative 2 really is the ideal alternative for pedestrian and bike safety. I think sort of like the more space you're able to take away to the road with, the slower traffic you're going to get. And that's just going to make it safer for people walking and biking, full stop, period. And I think those improvements far outweigh the slight bit of greenery you might get in alternative 1. Right? If we're concerned about the environment, getting people to leave their car at home, walk and bike is going to hands down win every time over more trees. So I just wanted to say that I fully support alternative 2. And also, that was the only comment I was going to make typically, but then I heard some other comments by commissioners. And I'm generally concerned at the amount of pearl clutching over parking in our city. We really can't be this environmentally conscious, fighting climate change city if we're really not doing anything to combat sort of like the induced demand that this space we allot to parking and traffic creates for driving in our city, and the safety and environmental impacts that kind of we bear from those decisions, right? So just generally moving forward, I'd love to see a little bit more consideration, around the safety of pedestrian and bicyclists, not just the pearl clutching over parking spaces. Okay, safety is far more important. That's all. Thanks.
Hey, Andy, if it's okay, I'd like to just say one quick thing.
Sure. And we have one other public speaker, but go ahead, Parker.
Okay, yeah, it was kind of in response to that about the wide, I guess, constricting of the road. And one thing I just want to point out is that in both options, the drive aisles in each direction are the same width. There's no change there. So the crossings in all locations are the same width. So I don't know if one is necessarily safer than the other. The Primrose intersection does have that quote unquote refuge, but it's not designed to be that way. The only reason that's the case is because there needs to be pedestrian access to the cars. The actual distance that the pedestrian is crossing and interacting with traffic is the same in both scenarios. Option 2 does have some, as you'd call, traffic calming measures that option 1 doesn't. One being that you have a slight change in direction where you're widening from the El Camino direction to Primrose, where that tends to slow cars down a little bit. So that is an added benefit, and I'll totally agree with that. But in general, and in theory, the traffic calming should be identical in both options, and that's what we were aiming for. And that's all I've got. You can please proceed with the next public comment.
Thank you. We have Mr. Valesco had his hand raised. I think he's in.
Good evening, commissioners. This is Manito Velasco. When this project first came to fore, there were two major things that was concerning to me. One was the proposal to have a bike lane between parking and the sidewalk, which I thought was problematic. So I'm glad to see that it's no longer here. But I just wanted to confirm that that this was something that the consultant thought was a bad idea, and that's why it got discarded, or was it other people in the public who also had concerns with it? The second thing that concerned me was exactly the U-turn discussion that you've all been having. Not so much from a passenger car perspective, but from a delivery trucks. These businesses will get paper trucks, water trucks, a bank truck perhaps. And so right now they have the ability, those truck drivers have the ability to make those direct left turns. Without those, they're obviously going to try to circulate around the avenue or around City Hall and the library. So if that is the case, I would just want to recommend to the consultant to make sure that the bulbs at the entry points and the medians are generous enough so that those large trucks that will now have to make the turns, since it's right turn in, right turn out, can actually turn into the street to make their deliveries. The other thing I wanted to get some clarity on is the stop signs. I read somewhere on the notes, it said optional stop signs. I don't know. I guess I need some clarification what that means. I believe the consultant said the intersection meant warrants, which to me, in participating in the public process in Burlingame, sounds like this intersection at Primrose and Chapin had 3 to 5 collisions in the last 12 months, because I believe that's what the city holds as the standard for putting in a stop sign. The city wouldn't put in a stop sign if it doesn't meet those criteria. So I just wanted to get some clarity on what exactly is happening at Primrose and Chapin. Is the city really going to be putting in a stop sign, or is this, as is being proposed here, just being for discussion and optional, not as a real thing that could happen? And then finally, I wanted to find out when the bulb outs at El Camino Real will be built, and if it'll be coordinated with the Caltrans project. It seems like there's a window that's closing on when these improvements can be made. We obviously don't want to build these big bulbs at El Camino, by Bank of America, by Molly Stones. Those are really needed for pedestrian safety. But we don't want to build them only for the El Camino Caltrans project to just demolish them because they need the room for their construction staging or for their trucks to go around. So I wanted to find out when those bulbs are supposed to be constructed, or if they'll be constructed as part of the Caltrans project. Thank you.
Thank you. I can respond, Andy, if you like.
Yeah, the only one I'm sorry, Parker. The only one I'll be able to take is the last one regarding the El Camino Real renewal project. But this project, we've only got funds right now for to get to this point. There are no construction funds yet. But that said, once El Camino, as that moves along, we'll try to coordinate this into that. But the El Camino won't be constructed without considering this, and vice versa. If we have to, potentially, if we get funding before that, we can look at holding that section out and having the Caltrans project do that. So it's something we will explore, but we're not at that point yet.
Okay, so I'll try and take them in order as I remember them, and hopefully someone can help me out if I miss one. First was the bike lanes. I think it was a combination of a bunch of things. One being that yes, we got a lot of feedback that either people weren't biking or didn't feel that they needed a full separated bike lane, as well as the traffic safety. And then, like I said, all the traffic calming measures that we're installing are going to help bike safety in addition. So the sharrows as well as the traffic calming, would work hand in hand to help safety. The left turn lanes, I think we've discussed that, except for kind of the loading. That was a big reason why there's no median towards El Camino Real. I'm sure you guys have seen the Molly Stone's trucks, kind of parking in the median, unloading. So that was a big reason why we're keeping the ability for that. And then for the rest of the road, left turns for delivery trucks and whatnot, like Jeff said earlier, that's something that we'll definitely look at and see if we can find a solution for, but I don't have it on hand. Let's see, I think there was a third one, but it's missing me right now.
Stop signs.
Oh, the stop sign, yes. So there was a warrant analysis done on the intersection. It did not meet warrant, so it's not a required improvement, but the traffic consultant still recommended that it be installed for traffic safety and calming measures. So at this point, it's simply an option in both alternatives, not required, and obviously no decision has been made on that. It was just something that came up a number of times in the public outreach, so we decided to study it with our traffic consultant.
Sure, and I think the last comment was just to ensure that when the ball belts are designed, that they're checked with truck turning radii to make sure that the design truck can easily make it through that intersection. So that's a very good point.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yep, Mr. Wong.
Sorry, and I'll leave this at your discretion. Ms. Frechette had her hand up again, but I'll leave it to you if you want to.
Yeah, generally I resist 2 bites at the apple, but Ms. Frechette, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the consultant for the technical clarification there. My point was more about the design of the median, and alternative 2 appears much more wider, and therefore for drivers, you are probably going to feel less likely to step on the gas, especially at the crossings where the bulb outs are larger. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Frechette. So yeah, I'll close. I'll just say, listen, I am I guess I'm a pearl clutcher. I do envision a future for our city where we have less parking in the downtown. I think we are looking to do a significant reduction when we create a town square in Lot J. And what I really hope we don't do is, while that is coming up, we snip parking all around the perimeter to the point where when it finally comes time to do the town square in Lot J, we feel like we can't spare it. We can't spare the parking. I want to make sure we are able to spare the parking in Lot J. So, I think we can probably get away with going down 12 spaces here. I would really like to see if we could preserve more spaces if possible. I would really hate to see forcing people who are already in private lots onto the street. But I do think, given all the equities, I could support alternative 2. I don't think I could support alternative 1 at this time. Mr. Wong, were you looking for us to vote on this, or how do you want us to proceed?
I'll check with Ms. Lee. I mean, this was an update, but if you guys want to just throw your support to one of these, she could just note that. Should we go ahead and have a roll call on that? It's up to you, Chair.
Well, we would need a motion, I think. So is anyone inclined to move on this?
I had one question. Would we be able to add that we recommend also the 3-way stop on Primrose at Chapin as part of our motion.
I,
Include it if we could. We do make exceptions in town, and I think the public wanted it, and I know I certainly want it. So would we be able to include that, Chair?
we could. I think, well, would anybody like to move here?
Well, I'll make the motion.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Lee.
Okay. I move that we approve alternative 2, and we ask City Council and our engineering department to consider adding a three-way stop at Chapin and Primrose Avenue.
Before, Commissioner Israelit, I saw your hand up. Pop
Oh,
up.
no, before you made the motion, I was just going to say, that this is still, my understanding was this is still very early stage planning, and we don't, like, by not mentioning the stop signs now and by not mentioning exactly where handicap parking goes, that we're not harming ourselves, that we will come back to this later as we get further into the planning process.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't see harm, and if we feel strongly about it, I don't see harm in saying that we would like to see it with the three-way stop. But I agree that if we didn't say anything, I think there would be plenty of time to come back for the specific designs. Is there anyone who would like to second Commissioner Lee's motion?
I can second that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Revelos. With the motion seconded, we would take a roll call to see all in favor.
Commissioner Revelos,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Israelit,
No.
Vice Chair Martos,
Aye.
Chair Wetton.
Aye. So motion carries 4-1-0. Okay, we can proceed to item 6C in regards to the red curbing on Devereux.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you to the consultants. Thank you
Thank
for
you
your
for having
thoughtful
us.
work. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
and thank you, Jennifer.
All right, let me call it up. All right. Thank you, Chair Wetton. And this one came up because we are currently working on our sidewalk repair project. And this one locations or near this intersection is near one of the locations we have. It's at 1928 Devereux. And let's just get into it. You know, as it says here, typically when we go out, our staff goes out and looks at the sidewalks. They also look at the curb ramps at the intersections. And as part of that, the intersections are not ADA compliant, Americans with Disabilities Act compliant. We'll go back and we'll do our best and see if we can upgrade those. There are some occasions where the ramps, there's a little difficulty in that. It becomes a bigger project. It's just not replacing the ramps with your yellow domes. There's inlets that need to be moved, utilities, and then those we have to pull back and then reevaluate as part of another project. But for this one, we went back out there and we noticed that in order to get a compliant ramp in there, we needed to shift the crosswalk. And by doing that, it impacts the ramp on the other side. And I'll show you where that is. Currently, Devereux at Bernal is a T intersection, and there's crosswalks on 2 of the lakes, and I'll also introduce why that's the case. And as it says here, all 3 ramps at this location need to be upgraded. The 2 ramps, okay, I mentioned that they'll be shifting towards Lincoln Elementary, and by doing that, as you'll see, the space between the ramp and the driveway at Devereux is reduced. So first off, here is, just for your reference, this is 1928 Devereux. We have 3 ramps here, one on the the southwest corner, southeast corner, and the northeast corner. Here is 1928 Devereaux, and here's that crosswalk coming across. Approximately between the crosswalk, I'm sorry, between the curb ramp and the driveway is 28 feet. Sorry, having some technical difficulties. Get you back to that. It's we've got 25 feet currently right there. So, sorry, apologize. I'm working on two computers right now. All right. So what we're trying to do is install the ramps as part of the annual sidewalk project. And once the ramps are installed, we would improve those crosswalks to high visibility crosswalks. The new crosswalk, what we recommend is red curbing the entire space. With the reduction of the space because of the crosswalk shift, the red curbing that we would put on there to improve pedestrian visibility at that crosswalk, because it looks like it's almost like a mid-block, we'd reduce that close to the 18 feet. And that means a car parking there would park right up against the crosswalk, even with a little 2 or 3 foot buffer. We also want to point out that Devereaux, as part of Lincoln's route to school, is marked that way. The traffic flow shows vehicles and peds going down Devereaux. As part of this, when we're reviewing it, we made contact with the resident that might be impacted with the loss of space. He indicated he had some concerns with that. And so we immediately placed a notice there, also indicating if there was any other feedback from the community regarding a red space. We received, again, the resident contacted us, and then we decided we'd put this on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Then we went and placed a meeting notice out there. And so what you have in your packet, what I had sent you was emails from the resident. And let me go on to discuss what we're doing. As you can see kind of the old crosswalk here. What we have to do because of the impacts here, we have to push this ramp further to the east. And by doing that, again, you can see there's a couple feet that we're losing right there. Again, it gets pushed and this space becomes becomes closer to 18 feet, but you're gonna have a vehicle parked right up against there. And as this is a T intersection, this side of it, for the cars going westbound, it looks like a mid-block crossing, and we won't have, you'll have a car parked here, and the pedestrian visibility is maybe compromised. So let's go. So the options we have are to red curb that entire space, which staff recommends, and install the upgraded crosswalks and curb ramps. Other potential options are to upgrade the crosswalk and the curb ramps, and then reduce the amount of red curbing that's there, leaving a space that may be close to the 18 feet, which is our minimum parking space length for on-street parking. Or the commission could entirely remove the crosswalk and ramp there at Devereaux. Again, if you move forward to this action or decide on this action, we would have to do a notice to allow for public feedback per the vehicle code that directs us how to remove a crosswalk. So what I'd also like to point out, the resident, he's listening tonight. He's on here, but I'd like to point out he had concerns with the removed parking space, obviously causing some parking inconvenience for those who use it. Another note that he made was impacting property values. He did propose a couple options that we may do. One was flipping the crosswalk from, let me go back to it, the aerial. Flipping it from this position to this position. Two things. right here, Devereaux is on a curve. And so by placing it where it's currently at gives you the best sight distance as you're coming out of that curve. And the other is you can see this little black square rectangular, that's an inlet. So the crosswalk would go directly to that inlet, and if not to the inlet, it would be into the driveway here. So the ramp years ago, however it was placed there with good reason. And the other comment the resident had was potentially put an RFB here. That's potentially a case, but we haven't done an RFB directly in a residential neighborhood. I believe the closest one that we have is the one on Carolyn, but that's between the tracks and usually the side of homes, so not right in front of homes.
I see someone else is asking in the chat. Mr. Wong, could you explain what that acronym is you just referred to? And
my apologies. The rectangular rapid flashing beacon, those are the ones that you press and then the lights go off. We have them in the roundabout, we have them on Broadway, and we have some out on Old Bay Shore.
Got it. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wong. No problem.
And I believe with that, I can take any questions the commission has.
Well, why don't we go to public comment first, and then I'll start running through the commissioners' questions and comments. So is there any public comment on this?
Sorry. Trying to find out what happened to my screen. Let me bring him in. Mr. Mike Liu. And if he has any public comment, you're able to speak, Mr. Liu, if you wish to. Okay. All right. And Mr. Liu didn't raise his hand, and
he says his mic is not working.
He is off mute.
Mr. Liu, I know this is important to you, so I don't want you to lose your opportunity here. I see you're chatting. If I have read your emails, hopefully the other commissioners have read your emails. If you have any last thoughts, you could chat them and we will see them. I'll give you a second, and then I think we're going to have to, you know what, actually, let me do this to be more practical. Mr. Liu, if you have some thoughts and you can't get your mic to work, try and chat. I'll proceed to the commissioners. If you get things working, great, or otherwise I'll have Mr. Wong read your chats. But in the interest of time, I'll start taking comments and questions from the commissioners, and we'll do our best to make sure you're heard, Mr. Liu. Okay. Commissioner Rebelos, do you have any questions?
No, not yet.
comments?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I do have a comment. I do have a comment. I did take the time to go by there today just to get a visual, and I really can't see an alternative. I'm open-minded, but I can't see an alternative to this proposal here. That's all I have right now.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Rebelos. Commissioner Lee?
Hi, thank you. I also took the time to go see this area in person. I had a few observations when I was there. Was there about 1 o'clock this afternoon? And there were a number of like 10, 12-year-olds who biked by, a lot of pedestrians, and you know, school's not even in session, and I was really surprised to see how many children were biking through the intersection. Then a couple walked, and then a couple of adults walk through the intersection. So it's heavily used by pedestrians, even though school's half a block away and school's not in session. So I think it's a very key intersection for the school and for people trying to access, I think that's Lincoln School as well as BIS, which is on the other side. The other thing I observed was the drivers coming, and I'll say down Devereux because it's actually a hill. So as we see on our photo, the left side, the bottom left corner is, the altitude is higher than on the top. It goes downhill. So people are kind of really going very fast down that hill, and they make a very fast right onto, what is that cross street? Burnell or something?
Bernal, yes.
Yeah, they make a very fast right onto that, just zipping through that crosswalk. And I was only there a few minutes, and that was my general observation of it. I had one question, which is why isn't the crosswalk ADA compliant as it is? I've been in a wheelchair, I've been on a walker, and I could handle that ramp. So I don't know why it isn't ADA compliant. That's one of my questions. Number two, I'd love to see the three-way stop, which I think would help mitigate, if we made it a three-way stop instead of just a one-way stop, it would help mitigate that race down the hill people are making down Devereux to get to the school. It would also make it that the crosswalk crossing, though I agreed not having a car park there is safer for pedestrians. It would make it less of an issue if we had a three-way stop, because the vehicular traffic would be stopped when the children are trying to peek around the parked car to be visible when they're crossing. And then the other thing I thought was, what about making it no parking 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, I guess, and allowing parking overnight should the, I mean, it would be a reduced stall, but make it no parking. Yeah, 8 to 4, 8 to 5 during school hours, but you could park there overnight. That was an alternative I saw. But I really felt the need for a three-way stop. And then if that happened, I think it's okay to leave parking there because that would help the pedestrians quite a bit crossing Devereux. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Wong.
It's up to you. Mr. Liu did have some questions. Would you like me to address Commissioner Lee's comments, or go ahead and read Mr. Liu's comments and then try to address them all at once?
Why don't you go ahead, Mr. Wong?
Okay. Let me read Mr. Liu's comments. How will red curbing on 1928 Devereux improve vision impaired person? Again, let me flip back to the photo. Do a screen share and show you. Let's try this one. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulties calling it back up right now. Well, what it is, it's as you come from the westbound direction, you're going towards Bernal from Lincoln School. You're going up that direction. You have someone walking out. It's a mid-block crossing there, essentially on the side of at 1928. So someone walking out, there's not the visibility if there's a vehicle parked there. Typically, like at mid-block crossings, we try to give a little space on either side so the pedestrian's more visible. But you have a car right up against there, as Commissioner Lee pointed out. The only way they can be seen is they stick their head out and kind of look and see if a vehicle's coming.
Mr. Wong, I'm sorry to interject, but are you taking into account the traffic flow in Devereux?
That there's the restriction during school hours.
Yeah.
However, this case, if a vehicle parks there, that crosswalk is not only active during school hours, it's active all day long. So that kind of addresses I guess, the no parking from 8 to 5 as well. And Mr. Liu's other question was, could we make one-way, Bernal one-way? And in a way during school hours it is, but that doesn't, again, as I stated, it doesn't help.
Well,
during
Bernal's
not
Bernal
Bernal,
is not one
Devereaux
way.
is one way.
Yeah. So Devereaux is one way during school hours, and Bernal, I think, is the only way across Easton Addition so, through to Truesdale. So I think that unless one of my fellow commissioners objects, we're not going to be considering the one-way traffic flow of Bernal tonight. Why don't we proceed?
Let me, if you don't mind, I'll tell a couple of Commissioner Lee's comments about the ADA compliance. Those ramps do not have truncated domes right now. And since these ramps were installed, as the ADA is constantly evolving document, the slopes are now slightly different on these ramps to the current ones. So in order to bring them all up to code, that's that one. And again, the always stop, we have to look at it. But again, stop signs are not speed control devices. Again, we would have to look at the warrants if we were to move forward with that.
Okay. I have some thoughts on that, but I'll wait. Commissioner Israel, I
Yes.
believe it was your turn.
It is my turn. I've been so patient. No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding. So I'm very familiar with this intersection because I drove my children to BIS for 6 years that way every morning and to pick them up, and oftentimes for sports practices. And then also that is the way I drove to work for the next 4 years. So I know that intersection like the back of my hand, unfortunately. I agree with Commissioner Lee's observations. It is a very busy intersection all day and all weekend because not only are sports occurring at the fields at Casada, by BIS and Franklin, but also Ray Park is, there's baseball, there's AYSO soccer, and it also is just that neighborhood has a lot of very young families, and there's a lot of older people walking their dogs. So there's always people at that intersection, 7 days a week. I support the option that the city has recommended, but I support having that whole area red curbed, because if you looked at the aerial view, not only would it be dicey to have to stick your head out and see, do you really want an 8-year-old sticking their head out to see if it's safe to cross? But in addition, the neighbor's driveway is right there. So, someone could be easily backing out and somewhat blinded by a parked SUV there, or even a parked regular car, and not being able to visualize the crosswalk as the neighbor is backing out. So I don't think we should cut corners and risk safety there. I think that, entire curb, as the city recommended, should be red. And also seconding what Commissioner Lee noticed, that when you're coming down Devereaux, so as you're heading toward El Camino around that curb, it is extremely hard to visualize. I actually have noticed that when I drive it, I literally have to lean over into the center of my car to make sure I can really visualize. It's very dicey, and a lot of times there's a little bit of a Tetris thing going on where you have to move over so someone else could pass. So I wouldn't be opposed to adding stop signs if it was to improve safety for crossing as opposed to speed. And I also feel that entire area should be red curbed. I don't think we should scrimp on safety when we've got kids walking that way to go to BIS and riding bikes every single day, and we've got kids going the opposite direction to go to the elementary school. It's a really important intersection. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Israelit. Vice Chair Martos.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions, for Mr. Wong. So if the crosswalk across Devereaux at that point were removed and moved down the street towards Lincoln, is there any good place on that street where you could relocate it that you wouldn't have the same problem with other neighbors down the street? Have you looked at that at all?
Through the chair, actually, there is another crossing of Devereaux right in front of Lincoln School. There's an alleyway that cuts through the residence here. Let's see if I can. Sorry, I won't be able to show something, but there is a mid-block crossing at Devereaux right in front of the school.
Okay. And then, you know, I went over there and I looked at this intersection. I had to see it. And I noticed that on the west side of the driveway of 1928 Devereaux, the curb was red by that gutter. What's the reason that it's red? Could that be a parking space? If you take away the residents parking where the new crosswalk would go, could you
So
open up?
that was the daylighting. There was a little bit, I mean, daylighting
on the other
at the
side.
crosswalk to allow for some visibility. So that was an attempt at some past point to allow for some visibility because of that. Like I said, essentially on that side looks like a mid-block crossing. And so at the time that was deemed enough red curbing to put there. It's something we could put similar, but again, as we shift this whole crosswalk towards Lincoln, the 25 feet that we have also gets reduced. So you take that into account. If whatever we need to shift it by, plus some more red curbing, that space is under 20 feet. And that's where we're at. And
so go ahead, finish.
Oh, and there's not many vehicles there that will be able to fit, giving some space. And you've seen it. People aren't as considerate about trying to leave some space for pedestrians. They're just worried about trying to get their car in and not be in the red or not block someone if it's a driveway.
So that to the west of the residence driveway is where the drainage is, where the drain is, and that whole curb there is painted red. And did I understand it? It'd be kind of tight to fit a car in there if it was not red?
On the other side, I'm sorry. On the other side, typically we try to keep folks
on
off
the other
the inlets. We try to keep folks off the inlets because if they do, they
Okay.
block it and then the drainage backs up.
Understood. But is there enough room for a vehicle and the inlet?
I don't
know how long that stretch is, but I noticed it was red.
We'll take a look, but I'll have to take another look up there. But as I recall, if you were to move it on that side, the driveway is close to the inlet too. So between the adjacent neighbor's driveway, the inlet, and the driveway in 1928, I don't believe there's enough space to park a vehicle without blocking one of the three aforementioned things.
Okay. 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 I don't have any other questions. I heard my commissioners speak and okay. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Thank you, Vice Chair Martos. Yeah, so people are not entitled, as a legal matter, people are not entitled to the curb space in front of their house. No one's entitled to that. But having said that, people do usually have an expectation that they'll have it. And I generally want to make every effort to make sure that we do what we can not to take away those spaces from homeowners. I think this is I agree with everybody. My kids went to Lincoln and BIS. So, I know this intersection well, like Commissioner Israelit does. It is frankly, it's kind of harrowing, this intersection. Cars do move very fast down Devereaux on this curve. I haven't seen a lot of, or I can't recall any collisions mentioned in the accident reports at this intersection. And frankly, that's surprising, having driven through it as much as I have, because people zip down Devereaux. You have left turners coming off Bernal, and it can be dangerous. I don't think moving the crosswalk is an option. To move the crosswalk up the street forces kids walking to Lincoln to cross Bernal, which is a bad idea if it can be avoided. So I think we have to improve the intersection where it is as much as we can. I actually think we should explore the three-way stop there. I think that's a very good idea, given if we observe traffic there, and given the amount of children moving in both directions there, I wonder if it could meet a warrant to put a stop sign there. And I would strongly encourage studying that. I think that likely would be a more important improvement to safety than the red curbing at that spot. I guess I do, before we come to a conclusion on this, I do want to just pressure test. And Mr. Wong, is it possible to bring the picture back up, or are your technical difficulties?
Give it another shot.
Yeah. I guess I would just want to ask the question. Could a car fit in that space? Could you give the street level view if possible? I think it's in slide 4. Yeah. I don't know if you can make that your whole screen so we can see it better. I guess the question I have is, would it be possible? So it's 25 feet now. You're saying once the crosswalk's moved over, you're down to 18 feet. I would note that, like, there's probably another foot there that doesn't really block the next door neighbor's driveway. Have we gotten any comments, by the way, from the person who lives at 1920 Devereaux?
1924 Devereaux. We have not.
Well, 1924 is the person whose comment, or
1920 where Mr. Liu lives. 1924 is here.
I got it.
They have frontage in front of theirs on the other side of the driveway for parking. So
right. But have they been solicited for comments?
We placed an A-frame out there with a notice indicating both the red curbing and the meeting.
Okay. So. I guess my point is, if you look at the frontage down the street, I mean, there probably is at least another foot there before, you've got a bush that pushes into that driveway where no one would be driving. You probably have another foot there. So I guess my question is, are we sure, like, there is room for a car there, right? Is this strictly about a pedestrian being able to see down Devereaux? Is that really the only purpose of this?
Sorry, through the chair, it's, if you have a vehicle here and then we have the westbound moving vehicle here, it's something we're trying to do as part of the bike ped master plan. When we look at is daylight these crosswalks. And so that's where we came that in order to try to, unfortunately, that's what we're trying to do now. Whereas before we might have just put it back in place and then put that couple feet of red curbing in there, but we're trying to improve the visibility. And so that's where this effort was, while we were out there when we're looking, that's how we came to this conclusion.
Yeah. And did you test it at all? Like maybe parking a car there and seeing what the visibility looked like?
We didn't. So it's something we could try, but just looking on what we've been trying to do in other locations, Lion Hogue, and part of the improvements that we're doing as our quick build projects, we're doing a little bit more than that at other locations.
Right. And can you put up the slide real quick, and then I'll take a motion. Can you put up the slide real quick of what your proposal looks like with the red curb? There we go. So this is what the new ramp would look like. I assume the yellow line would move down, right?
Correct.
And that's 18 feet, the part that's the red curb that you're showing.
It's roughly that.
Okay. And that's the minimum amount of footage you could give a car. In other words, you couldn't leave like 2 feet of red curb there and then leave a space. That wouldn't be enough.
It would be probably less than that. And the concern is obviously you've seen it anywhere you've parked. You see a compact space, and how often have you seen a vehicle that's not necessarily compact parked there? And that's the dilemma we face.
Right. Okay.
Through the chair, something we can look at, and because as staff, we've driven down the street, but we haven't driven it down as parents. We can take a look at and see what the additional, obviously this is a residential area, probably low volumes. My guess, it wouldn't meet volume warrants. However, based on the school warrant that we can look at, as well as visibility, we'll take a look at that curve. If there's an opportunity that we can look at this location for an all-way stop, it's something we can consider, but we'll have to take a look at it. And just because of those, that's where we can take a look at and try engineering judgment, but that's probably the only way. It's not going to meet, my guess is it's not going to meet traffic warrants, and we'll look at the collisions. But again,
can you remind us what the warrants are? Like what the requirements would be to be able to put a stop sign in here? And doesn't safe routes to school also, does the fact that this is a route to school change it at all?
I think it goes down 70%. 70% of the volumes that they require, but it's something we can take a look at. I'll work with Mr. Stein. We'll see what we can do. And again, it's tough to do the volume, so we're going to look at the other things. Because we're not going to be able to get counts out here that are, and I don't think we have any older counts out here that we can apply and factor up or do anything.
You might have muted out for a second. What counts do you need to be able to
volume counts, right? What happens is you want to see if there's, again, the purpose of a stop sign is to sign right away. If we have issues with that, where there's heavy volumes in each direction and people get to the intersection, no one knows who goes next. And it's a little tougher here because it's a T intersection, right? Because Devereaux is pretty much going to be considered the major street. So folks going down Devereaux aren't yielding to the minor street, which is Bernal. But that we're probably not going to hit those volumes here.
I don't know, Mr. Wong. If you go down there at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:10 in the morning on a school day,
right?
It's pretty heavy volumes. It's pretty heavily trafficked with lots of kids crossing in both directions. I mean, if you don't know Burlingame, you look at it, it's just something in the middle of a neighborhood. But in fact, this intersection is crazy. It is a lot of heavy traffic in both directions and a lot of kids going in both directions. So
we'll take a look.
I think it's worth looking at. And I guess my question, given the choice, and I'm not saying it's a choice, but I think the three-way stop would go a lot farther towards safety in this intersection than this red curb. A lot farther. And I'm not saying I know it's not a choice. You could do both, or you could do neither, but I do wonder if you improve the crosswalk and you put a stop sign in there, is the red curb quite as essential?
And we can take a closer look at that combination with the stop sign. That's something we did, but why don't we try, we will get back to you on this.
And before, the other thing I would suggest, and my fellow commissioners may want to move faster, but the other thing I would suggest, before we take away the frontage parking from this person's house, is I would like to have a visual of what it looks like. Someone should park, we should park a car there. and say, this is where the car would be parked on the new ramp. And then you can superimpose the yellow striping of where it'll be. So we get a visual of like, okay, is this really a big problem from a visual perspective because look, the last thing I want to do is create a situation where, a kid pokes out of a car and gets hit. But I'd like to make this decision based on some visual data rather than just speculation. If that's possible. And the other thing is, I don't know, there's no rush here, right? I mean, school's about done, right? Yeah. School's going to be done by the time you get this done. We can fix the crosswalk and fix the ramps, which we absolutely need to do. And we can red curb this later if we look at it and don't think it's workable.
That is true.
Okay. Well, I might be alone on this. Let me poll the commissioners and see if they have any views before we proceed. Commissioner Rebelos, what are your views?
I appreciate the thinking, but so I approached it from all three directions today, gave it a try, and what I noticed when I approached it from, coming from Lincoln, is it's a very narrow road, even without a car parked there. And I think if it was a wider road, the idea of maybe having a smaller parking space there with a stop sign might be a little more possible. But I feel there's two things that, especially with the larger SUVs, a car parked that close would also block the stop sign, perhaps, block you from being able to see the stop sign. But if there's a car parked there's only one lane to drive through there for both directions. So how does that work with a three-way stop? Someone is going to have, if you have someone arriving at all three sides at the same time, and they all want to proceed through Devereux, you're going to have I don't know how they're going to work that out.
Well, I mean, it's probably the way it gets worked out all around Easton Addition every day, up every road, which is people have to kind of look at each other and wave, be courteous. But I think it's a good point. I don't mean to diminish your point, and I'm interrupting. So please go ahead.
I appreciate it. So that's why I'm supportive still to at least to this point in the conversation of the red curb there, because I think at least you have the visibility, you have the room for the cars to get through. To me, I think it's pretty well thought out. But I respect other perspectives as well. But I would support it as it is.
Commissioner Lee, your thoughts?
Thank you, Chair. I feel that it would be great if my number one desire would be to have a three-way stop there. The parameters that were used for the Victoria Park stop sign that was just added in the Lion Hogue development, it did not meet the regular criteria, but because it was by a park, the City Council and the engineering department recommended a stop sign there over by Victoria Park. It met none of the criteria that I'm aware of. So anyway, I'd like to use that same criteria for this, because it sounds like we have the majority of us, including the homeowner Mike, who would like to have the three-way stop there. If there was a three-way stop there, I even though I'm big pedestrian safety advocate, I would be fine with not redlining it. If there is no three-way stop sign there, then the inability for pedestrians to step out, they have to step way out into the street in the crosswalk to peek around, let's say, the giant SUV that might be parked there, then that makes it a hazard. So if we can get the three-way stop there, I'd be okay not redlining it. And I would hope that these staff And city council would look at this as a major intersection approaching two different schools and a park and make the exception as they did at Victoria Park. If that doesn't happen, then redlining, unfortunately, I see is the only option. And when I was there and I got out of my car and I walked around, most every garage is a 2-car garage with 2-car parking spaces in front of it. There was absolutely no tight parking there. It's not like near Broadway or Chula Vista or my neighborhood over here in Lion Hogue. There's a ton of parking on those streets. So even though you can't park in front of yours, there's like 8 others really close to you, plus your own driveway to park in. But my number one would be to do a 3-way stop and reduce the standards. Since we won't have school in session probably till September, but the city's council and staff can do it. They did it at Victoria Park. They could do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Commissioner Israelit, your thoughts?
My thoughts are that unfortunately, I do feel that we have to make it a red curb for the safety of the hundreds of children who cross by there and bike by there every day. And, you know, I'd like to sort of, we don't know about the 3-way stop and we can't make our decision based on that. You know, what we could do, Commissioner Lee, for instance, is why don't we approve the safest alternative, which would be to have that red curb there. And if in the future we do manage to get a 3-way stop and we decide that there is room for parking, we can always paint over the red paint. But I have to go with the safest option. You know, to me, it's like, it's unfortunate, you know, that the resident won't have a spot available in front of his house. But as Commissioner Lee has said, you know, there's always other open spots in that area. So I feel very comfortable moving forward with that. And I think it's the safest thing.
Thank you, Commissioner Israelit. Vice Chair Martos.
Well, so Commissioner Lee laid it out very logically, and I was going to second her opinion if it was a motion. And I really do, I agree with the way she laid it out. This is tough for this homeowner. And, you know, I asked if the crosswalk can be moved. That's probably not a good option. I asked about the red curbing on the other side of his driveway, and that can't be removed because it might block a gutter. I'd like to know more if the warrants are there to put a 3-way stop. You know, I don't really want to make a decision until I know whether that's a possibility or not. If it's not a possibility to put a 3-way stop, then I approve the proposal. But that's not the decision I want to make until I know if we can get the warrants to put a 3-way stop at that intersection. So that's the way I feel about it.
Okay. Well, I think everyone had some very compelling thoughts here. I don't think I have anything to add. I think I probably, I think this is a close one and a tough one. I think I err on the side of the approach articulated by Commissioner Lee and Vice Chair Martos, only because we can freely change our minds and put the red curbs in a couple months after we do a deep dive and decide whether we can put stop signs there, which, by the way, I think I will say will go a lot farther towards improving safety in this area. And look, we can always then decide to put the red curb in. We've got time. And I do think once you put that red curb in, it's going to be tough to take it out. And it is putting sort of a unique burden on one homeowner, which occasionally we do. We've had to do it before. but I just want us to only do it after we've kind of exhausted all the possibilities. And it may be that even if we have the stop signs there, when we look at, if we get some visual data that shows that, having a car parked there is dangerous, we'll take it out. I mean, I'll cite the history here, which I know Vice Chair Martos knows well. I'm not sure if Commissioner Israel was on the commission, but we had a similar situation up by Hoover. And I think we spent a couple different meetings on it. We did try and exhaust all the options. And then in the end, I think we proceeded, with some sort of, I've been up there. It's like isn't it a time
restricted?
It's a time restricted space. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that was as you recall, Chair, and that was a unique one because that roadway was narrow and it was a balancing act. But
just like this is, though, I think in principle, look, I think where I come out is, look, unfortunately, people occasionally will lose spaces in front of their homes. There's no guarantee that the space that you have in front of your home when you buy it will be there in the future. That's a fact. But having said that, I don't think we should take them away without really making sure we've exhausted the options and studied it carefully. So I would lean towards a motion that says, go ahead, fix the curb. We're not moving the crosswalk. I think we're basically aligned that that's not really a good option. But proceed with the crosswalk, study a three-way stop, and then maybe we'll come back and evaluate the red curb once that's done. Would anybody like to make a motion along those lines?
I'll make a motion.
Sure. Please proceed, Commissioner Lee.
Thank you. I move that we wait to vote on the red zone at 1928 Devereaux, and that we ask staff to consider recommending to City Council a three-way stop sign at the intersection. Was it Devereaux and Vernal?
Yes.
Due to very high child, pedestrian, and bicyclists and motor vehicles using this intersection during school days.
The one thing I think we want to make sure we do is also approve the fixing of the ramp as well.
I don't know if we can, Mr. Wong. Can we fix the ramp and not move the crosswalk?
No.
That's all part of it. The
Yeah.
Fixing the ramp on one side will force the crosswalk to be relocated. And that's how we get to where we are.
Okay, and in addition, we approve the fixing of the ramp and moving of the crosswalk.
Does anyone second that motion?
I second it.
Okay. Okay, let's take a roll call.
Commissioner Rebellos,
Aye.
Commissioner Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Israelit,
Aye.
Vice Chair Martos,
Aye.
Chair Wetton.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0-0. And we can proceed to the engineering report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Liu. All right. Thank you, Chair Wetton. Let me give you the engineer's report. California Drive Bicycle Facility RFP. Actually, staff has completed a kickoff meeting with the design team, and they'll be working on the concepts that were developed in the master plan, further enhancing that, and then we'll go to the public, and the commission will get to take a look at those and get some feedback on that. Let me make sure there's no public comment on that. All right, the next one is the Broadway grade separation project. And this date that I have on here is just recently changed since this report was done. We're working with the design team to bring the various value engineering options that will potentially save the project money, again, reduce the impacts to Broadway. However, the date that they're going to bring this to city council has been, I think, will be slightly delayed. Some other issues have come up working with our partner, the Joint Powers Board or Caltrain. So I will get you an update with the correct date. Burlingame Station improvements. We've had a kickoff meeting on this. We're going to work through some concepts to show you folks based on the what we had originally had on the Lion Hogue traffic calming project. Let me skip this Hoover and I'll get back to it at the end. And there's a reason. Broadway pedestrian streetlights. They opened bids on the 16th. 8 bids were received, but apparently there's been an issue with one of the bids, so we will have to go back out to bid on this again. Apparently there's, and we will get back to you. So this project, again, we have seen those streetlights, pedestrian scale lighting that we're going to put upon Broadway. And when I talked to our project manager on that, just an issue came up. Old Bayshore Highway Corridor Study. As you know, I think I sent all of you a notice that the survey is open for your participation. Sorry, Commissioner Rebellas has not gotten that because he wasn't on the list yet, but I will get him that. We're looking for feedback. It's just, again, gives you the process. There are no concepts on this one, but we just want an idea of what priorities the folks are looking for here. What, aesthetics for pedestrians, aesthetics in general, bicycle facilities. We've also extended the survey till the 16th, April 16th. So far, we've reached out to obviously the community, the traffic safety, BPAC has been made aware of this. And we've just done a noticing to the stakeholders in the vicinity along Old Bayshore and then the commercial properties, retail properties, whatever, in that area. The Highland Avenue parking garage, again, we're still waiting for PG&E, although we've had some success. It looks like right now they have roughly September that they'll be able to install the transformer for that. I think we've been able to push that up, but there's no exact date on that. And the last thing I wanted to get back to you folks was Hoover, the pedestrian project. The project right now for the sidewalk up on Summit has been, it's out for advertising we're seeking contractors. And so we hope to have that done this summer. But what I did want to show you was, open it. We have some work that's been done up there just this week. No. Sorry. Here's a photo of what's been happening up there right now along Easton. So as part of our resurfacing project, as I mentioned in a previous update, that asphalt walkway that was pretty poor shape, it's being replaced. This was just done today. They just removed the old one, and tomorrow they're going to be, they managed to preserve a lot of the rock walls, and then there's some rock, some like granite curbs out there they were able to save. So they're going to resurface this tomorrow. So by this weekend for sure, there should be a walkable path up there up to God, Hoover School. So just letting you guys, give you an update on that. There's a couple different photos, but that's something I know Commissioner Martos had been getting questions on, and I know Chair Wetton was instrumental in with former Commissioner Akers and being the subcommittee up there. So a lot of work being done out of Hoover. So just wanted to let folks know, and eventually we'll let the PTA know, but they'll probably see it before we ever get to tell them. So that is the engineer's reports. Oh, and the parking restrictions have been, that we have are gone to council for Howard Avenue. So
Oh, great.
we can move forward to make those long-term spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. The improvements on Easton, that's a big deal. That's something that people have been looking for a long time. I see Commissioner Lee had a question.
Sure.
Thank you. I just had a couple questions on the engineering report.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. So because Commissioner Israelet and I are on the Broadway subcommittee, I know I'd be interested in getting the Broadway pedestrian and street lighting plan, as well as the Broadway grade separation project plan, as it does affect Broadway. So I would be interested in finding out when City Council would get it, and could we also be CC'd on that report when it comes out? That was one thing. And the other thing is on the Burlingame Station pedestrian improvements. The traffic engineer on BPAC, Manito, and I worked on an alternative design for the east side of the Burlingame train station. And was that shared with the, was it CSP or PCS, or was that shared with the consultants, our version of the east side to be considered in addition to the Lion Hogue drawing?
Sure. Through the chair, not to get into a big discussion, but yes, it was shared.
Okay, all right, good. We wanted that. And when you send out the link for the Old Bay Shore, can you send it out back out to all of us? I don't know, like maybe I got it, but I don't remember doing it. So could you CC me on that link?
And the link is here at the bottom of the engineer's report. It's the www.survey.surveymonkey.
Okay, I see it here. Thank you. I've printed it out. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, well, in that case, let's move to the traffic sergeant and the collision reports.
Hello, everyone, commissioners. So if you have the collision report in front of you, it looks like there was 21 documented collisions this period in March. I've highlighted the ones I thought would be of interest, but if there's any that you'd like to ask questions about, please let me know.
Well, I think it would be good for you to tell us a little bit about the one on Chapin, considering the amount of time we spent talking about it tonight.
Yeah, so the one on Chapin, actually, it was a pedestrian that was crossing like directly across from 1440 Chapin, where the parking, sort of where the parking spaces are, those diagonal parking spaces. And it was a motorist, traveling, I believe, westbound towards El Camino, and didn't see the pedestrian. And actually, I think he ran over the foot, and actually stopped on the foot of the pedestrian. So there was some injury. It wasn't nothing life-threatening, but there was an injury associated with it.
Okay. Did any commissioners want to ask about any other highlighted incidents?
It looks like there's a couple of pedestrian incidents and a bike, just to ask about those.
Of course. So I'll just start with the first one that's highlighted, the one at Broadway, Cappuccino near Broadway. That one was a vehicle was traveling southbound on Cappuccino, intending to pull into the lot, the mini lot there. And there was a pedestrian there, I guess, sort of walking on the sidewalk near the edge of the driveway. And as the motorist pulled in, the passenger side mirror, so it'd be the right side of the vehicle, struck the pedestrian. So it was minor, but nonetheless, it was a vehicle pedestrian accident.
And the pedestrian was on the sidewalk? And
yeah.
They just turned right into the pedestrian?
Yes, I mean, essentially, I mean, they turned right and the mirror struck the pedestrian. So
Wow.
they took the turn too close, or, you know, we're traveling at a speed that was unsafe for pulling into a, you know, crossing a sidewalk and pulling into the driveway of the muni lot.
Okay.
The next one was a vehicle pedestrian accident on, we just talked about that one. That was the Chapin one that was, it says it's near El Camino, State Route 82, but it was actually at 1440 Chapin. The other one was down in the Lion Hogue neighborhood. It was at Howard and Dwight. I believe the vehicle was traveling westbound on Howard, and the bicyclist was traveling northbound on Dwight. There's a stop sign there. They both stated that they stopped at the stop sign, yet somehow there was a collision nonetheless. The bicyclist struck the vehicle. Due to the lack of independent witnesses, we're unable to determine fault in that collision because there's no camera footage, no witnesses. So we just documented as best we could. We just list it as unknown, and then I'd assume the insurance company could, determine who they would place at fault and who wouldn't be. What was the next one? Oh, there was one. I don't know if you guys are concerned with El Camino Real and Ray Drive. We've had a lot of complaints about the intersection, and I'll pull up the collision map in a minute, which will show everything, but that's been a problem intersection. There's been collisions there, and that collision was a vehicle turning, I believe it was turning left from northbound El Camino onto westbound Ray Drive, and there was another vehicle proceeding southbound on El Camino and struck the car that was turning. So the car that was at fault would have been the one that was turning, failure to yield. That's a pretty, I don't want to say it's a common occurrence, but it seems like everywhere we have like 4 lanes, so like 2 lanes in each direction, those type of collisions occur. And I think it's because sometimes the person in the number 1 lane, if there is another vehicle, there wasn't in this case, but if there is another vehicle, you might have one vehicle yielding and, maybe even waving to the person to go, but then you have someone in the number 2 lane that's just driving along and they actually have the right of way. They're not doing anything wrong, and someone just turns directly in front of them. So those are intersections where there's 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction with an unprotected, without a left arrow or a red arrow. We seem to have some of those collisions. It's one of our most common, I would say, collision factors is failure to yield. I think speeding would be the first one, and I think failure to yield was the second when I did the OTS report. What else was on the report?
The other interesting one is the Chapin and Primrose, since we're going over that intersection tonight. Did they hit a
Chapin and
stop light?
Primrose. So that one, that was a vehicle struck a parking meter. So that one wasn't as exciting. But I believe it was in a parking lot as well, but they just hit the parking meter. I think there was like either pulled too far forward or, didn't hit the brake in time.
Bayswater Stanley, they hit an object.
Stanley, okay, that was vehicle object. Let me look at that one. 6, 8. While I'm pulling this up too, I wanted to mention there's been a pretty steep increase in enforcement on Burlingame Avenue about all the problems that we've been having with the bicyclists. I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but we've got a number of complaints. There's been we've had some both OTS operations, and on the weekends at night, there's been in the evenings, there's been a lot more enforcement, and the number of tickets have been issued, mainly for a lot for juveniles not wearing helmets. And, unfortunately, and the reason I want to mention this is because some of you are parents, and I know that you buy, and I know all the parents do, they provide their kids with helmets. They leave the house with the helmets on, and then they disappear, or they are put in their backpack and they're riding around downtown, riding crazy with no helmet. So that's a concern to us, obviously. So we've been issuing citations and contacting parents for those that are under 18, and any other violations like riding on the sidewalk. We've really been enforcing that. So I don't know if you've gotten any feedback on that. I just want to make sure you guys were aware.
That's great to know, Sergeant Perna. And maybe after the meeting, I'll give you the constant whereabouts of my 10-year-old, so you guys can chase her down and make sure she has her helmet on all the time.
The one that was mentioned on Bayswater in Stanley, that was actually a vehicle that was backing out of it was a low-hanging tree limb, and the vehicle backed into, it was a city maintained tree, but the vehicle backed into the tree limb that was protruding down in the 300 block of Bayswater. So it struck the tree limb and then damaged the vehicle. You know, the vehicle struck the tree limb, which broke, and then damaged the vehicle.
If there are no further questions, thank you, Sergeant Perna.
Of course. So let me pull up the map now.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Get map and go in here. I don't have it. Oh, here it is. Okay, let's go. So share. Mr. Wong, am I able to, because with the new format, I don't think I'm able to share my browser. Or are you guys able to enable that?
Sorry, you should have been a panelist, but let's see what we can do. Oh. Okay, go ahead and try again, Dave.
Okay. Okay, yeah, it's working now. Move this over. Okay, can you guys all see that?
We had it, and now it's
Gone.
a white stripe.
A white stripe. Okay, let me see if I could figure out what happened.
I thought I did something, so I'm so glad you said something.
Yeah, no.
Chair.
Still nothing there. Let me try. Apologize. I don't know why this is not working. Okay, let's go out of this. That's still not showing up, huh? Because I'm showing it on my screen, but it's saying that it's shared. Okay, let me try one last thing here, so I'm not taking up all your time.
There it is.
It's there now?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so what I did was I added, we talked last time, and we wanted to make this 5 years, and we wanted to add bicycles, pedestrian collisions, bicycle vehicle collisions, and also just regular collisions for vehicles. So I went ahead and did that. The one that's viewed now, these are pedestrian collisions. This is 5 years up until current, and then those would be the, I guess, the orange circles. And then let me see if I could, wish there was a way I could minimize this portion, but in any case, so that shows the pedestrian collisions, the green dots, and those represent parks, and then the blue ones represent the schools. So I could zoom in to any areas here. First of all,
Sergeant Perna, this might be a good time. Well, why don't we look at the intersection of Bernal and Devereaux on this map and see what we see?
Yeah.
Because I was speculating during the conversation about what had happened there, and having this map, I may have been worthwhile having you call up this map while we were talking. Okay, so
Devereaux and then Bernal that's right here.
Yeah.
So we're talking about right in this area.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it right there. So it does show the school and the park.
Yeah.
School and the park there. So this would be pedestrians, and then we could add we'll add bicycles on there. So I've just added bicycles. There's no change. And then let's add vehicles. So looks like there was a couple vehicle collisions
Yeah.
there. I could tell you some details. So this was back in 2016, and
Middle of the day.
looks like an unsafe. It was a vehicle that struck a parked vehicle. I could look into that one closer if you'd like, and then let's just take a look at the other one. And this was on in 2019, and same thing. It was a 22-107, so it's an unsafe turning movement. But this was two vehicles, but this one was a hit and run.
Ooh. Okay. But that's really helpful. I mean, I think that's a great case study right there, right? Where we could just zoom in on an intersection we care about and see everything.
And I'll go ahead and I'll keep this maintained as well. So as we move forward, I could just add the data from the previous month. So I'll share the data of the report like we normally do, and then we could again, just what you discussed, I could focus in on any intersection.
Yeah.
And I guess we could, if Mr. Wong didn't have any objection, I guess we could also pull this up when you guys are speaking about particular intersections if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think in the future we should. I think it's almost, now that we have this, I think we absolutely, if anytime we're talking about a particular location, we should ask you to pull this up and make sure that we're very smart on the accident history.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, could we look at Howard and what is that, Highland? Where's the new parking garage? Where are the people going to cross over there at Howard?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Yeah. I don't know what. I think it's a couple of streets. It's Howard and a couple of streets as they walk toward town from the parking garage, correct? So Howard and Lorton and Highland.
So the parking garage is in this. This is Highland here. So there's the entrance. It's in this area right here, isn't it? Isn't this where the garage would be?
So I think they'll be crossing at Lorton and at Highland, correct? Pedestrians. So.
Okay, let's focus in here. So this is so that's right now viewing pedestrians and bicycles, and then I'll add in the vehicles. I'm sure there's going to be a lot. Yeah, there's a bunch. So these here, so this was this is a recent collision in March of 2021. This was a hit and run, a misdemeanor hit and run at 1131 Howard. It was a vehicle into a parked motor vehicle. This one here was in 2019. Another hit and run vehicle into this just says another motor vehicle occurred. See, this one's a little bit off because this might have been where some of the GPS data doesn't match exactly where. So this collision, it says it occurred actually on Park at 110 Park, which is a little bit for, a block over. Let's look at this one here.
What about the two pedestrian hits there?
These ones here?
No,
so,
underneath the car hits at Howard.
Okay, give me a second.
Yeah.
So let's take the cars off. These two.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one here, this was July 5th, 2020. In this case, the pedestrian was at fault. I could pull up the details on that if you'd like. I just want to see if I could get the one underneath it. And then the one underneath it was in 2018. This was failure to yield to a pedestrian at Howard and Lorton.
And did we just have one the other month? I think we had another one, didn't we, recently?
It would have been on here. Was it at Howard and we had one, I believe, down here. Wasn't it? I think it was on California. Is that the one you're talking about? The one where it was like the person said it was the intersection was dark and the people were wearing dark clothing. Is that the one?
No, that was way further north on California.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I thought we just had one at Lorton or at Highland and Howard recently. Maybe I'm misremembering. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. Sergeant Perna, this is an amazing tool, and I'm really looking forward using it as we go forward and bringing this in earlier in the meetings to inform what we do. And I really appreciate the time you've put in. I think it's going to be a huge help to our evaluation and commenting process.
Great. I'm glad you guys feel that way.
It's well worth the time. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
So with that, I'm gonna close this portion of the meeting, and I'm gonna skip the farmers market item, and we can go to any commissioner communications.
I had one from my husband.
Okay.
All right, so, I live in the Lion Hogue area, and he was bike riding. He was bike riding eastbound on Bloomfield Road. And at Plymouth Way, the city has added like their little triangular islands on Bloomfield Road that make motor vehicles like go around them to try to squeeze the traffic, the driving traffic. So my husband wanted to go northbound on Plymouth Way off of Bloomfield. He's on his bike. And because he was kind of in the middle of the lane, because he wanted to turn left briefly, apparently there was a car behind him also heading eastbound on Bloomfield. And there are no traffic controls for about half a mile on Bloomfield. There's one traffic hump and a couple dips, but no controls. And so this motor vehicle driver decided to go on the left lane, which is actually the oncoming traffic lane, so the driver could pass him around the traffic calming device islands. So the driver actually drove in the left lane to go around him and around the left side of the yellow post in the middle of the driving. He was really scared because this person sped up to do it because he was about ready to make a left, and this car is swooping around him to his left in the lane that's going the other direction. I know we have traffic humps that slow traffic about a block and a half east of there. I think that's too far east. It'd be nice to have them closer to the Plymouth Way intersection and perhaps flanking both sides of Plymouth Way. And BPAC had requested that Plymouth Way be a four-way stop, but it was not approved, but it actually could be a school crossing there. But my husband got really scared that this car drove on the left side of the traffic calming and drove in the other lane, oncoming traffic. It's just pretty wild and fast still on Bloomfield. And he was very scared. Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioner communications before we move to the
Yeah, I have
subcommittee?
one.
Okay. Vice Chair Martos.
I have one. So public comment period has opened on the Peninsula Avenue interchange project. And this is a public comment on scoping, the EIR, and the comments from the public can be registered and submitted by May 23rd. So wanted to get that out there, Commissioner Lee. You probably want to weigh in on that. I'm going to weigh in on that. And Andy, if we could maybe get this, I don't know if we can, Mr. Wong, if we can get this on the Burlingame e-News. I got it because I signed up with City of San Mateo to get the information sent to me. But I don't know if general population, especially in the Lion Hogue area, know that they're taking public comments now. So if you need me to send you this email from City of San Mateo or actually it's the Department of Transportation, DOT, I can forward that to you.
Yeah, I don't, through the chair, I personally don't have it. So why don't you go ahead and forward it, and
Okay.
it may already be in the process.
Okay. All right, I will. All right. That's all I had.
Okay. So with that, I think we could move to the subcommittee reports. I don't know if there's been a lot of activity this month. Also,
Chair? Sorry.
Yes.
I did have one, staff had a public, we get many of them, but this is a special one. Interaction. We did receive a communication from Miss Lynn Israelit regarding some work that's been done in front of property by PG&E, and I wanted to let her know, because I didn't send her an email, that they should be coming back to do that work soon, within a month. So just wanted to get that in there.
Thank you. That's pretty embarrassing because I sent it to the Department of Public Works, not thinking that, it would land on your plate. Yeah, our street has been dug up for replacing gas lines for a couple months now. So I just wanted to make sure they didn't leave without finishing everything.
They should be returning.
Thank you.
Actually, so on subcommittee reports, I don't know that there's actually a lot of activity in our subcommittees, but it would be good now that we have a new commissioner to see if there's a place for him on one of these subcommittees. Or, and by the way, it's not etched in stone. We can add them, we can subtract them over time. Should we go through what they are? And Mr. Wong, would you maybe just go through what they are and who's on them? And
sure thing.
Yeah.
It's on the agenda, but we've got the downtown parking, which is the Burlingame Avenue downtown parking. We have Vice Chair Martos on that, as well as Chair Wetton. Broadway issues, talking about, I believe, pedestrian parking issues along Broadway commercial district, and that would be Commissioner Israelit and Commissioner Lee. We also have school traffic, which Chair Wetton and Commissioner Israelit. And then this was probably the newest one, the citywide transportation alternatives, and the lone commissioner on that is Chair Wetton.
So I should probably give you a little bit of background on citywide transportation alternatives, which is that there have been over time more than one mention from the city council about thinking about opportunities to add shuttles and public transit within Burlingame. That could expand also. We've thought about even, ride sharing and subsidized cab services. I know Commissioner Revelos, you know a lot about that, which is great. So I hope that you'll consider being on that subcommittee. We don't currently have openings on the other subcommittees, although that could change with a little time. So if you're willing, we'll put you on that subcommittee. And I think there may be more opportunities as time passes.
Sure, it's my turn.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm actually very interested in that particular committee. I'm trying to look here and see what the meeting dates are.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
There are no meeting dates. You may set that up. It's a little, you may set that up, work with Chair Wetton, and you guys can talk about what you want, and we can go over what we've previously done as far as trying to work on I guess we'll call it a crosstown shuttle. But
yeah, Mr. Wong, it would be great if you could share kind of the past things we've looked at. And there was a grant that we applied for. Was that about 2 years ago, Mr. Wong? We applied for a grant. We didn't get.
But you should have.
What's that?
But you should have. It was a great.
I think
you guys should revisit that. It was really awesome. So I don't think you guys should quit.
Thank you, Commissioner Israel. Yeah. So, well, if you're willing, we can talk offline about what we've looked at and get you caught up, and proceed from there. I don't. On the subcommittees I'm on, which is like a lot of them, I don't think there's anything to report. Is there anything to report up from the Broadway issues committee?
No, other than requesting the street lighting and the overpass plans as they become available. The other thing I was going to ask, I thought BPAC was considered one of the subcommittee reports that I was on, or committees I was on. I don't see it listed here.
Through the chair, I think based on the history of it, the BPAC is now a community BPAC. That's the way, because they don't, yeah, we've had folks visit, Teaspoon members attending the meetings, but we traded that for the item 6A, where we get the update from the BPAC.
Okay.
That is a good point, though, Mr. Wong, which is that we traditionally, so BPAC's not technically a subcommittee, but we traditionally put 2 traffic safety and parking commissioners in there. So before it was Commissioners Launder and Bush. They're now both gone. Commissioner Lee is there. So we do have space for another commissioner. 3 commissioners. We don't want 3 commissioners to show up because that causes Brown Act problems. So we do have space for another commissioner to join the BPAC and participate in those meetings. So Commissioner Rebelos, I should have asked you if that was also something you're interested in. There is an opening there as well.
BPAC is Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Yes. Yeah, I am interested in that one as well. I just have to be mindful of my schedule because typically I travel. I have meetings I go to in other cities. So I just have to be mindful that I don't schedule things on the same days.
Yeah,
that's all.
The good news with this one is BPAC meets right before the Teaspoon meeting. So it's the same day of every month.
Yeah, okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, so it'd be great to have you on there. I think we probably need to start recruiting more people to get on BPAC. So this is a great it would be great if you could join BPAC and very helpful. And it won't be on different days.
So
yeah,
going
that helps.
PAC subcommittee, I was looking for it on the city website, and it's really hard to find, as it is very hard to find the bicycle pedestrian plan that was just passed. I was hoping, Mr. Wong, is there a way to get it to be more visible on the city website and to have the bicycle pedestrian plan also more accessible? It'd be nice if people were able to find it and then maybe click on an email and be able to like email me and say, I'd be interested in joining the group or something. It needs to be more visible. I don't know how we would do that.
And that one's, I guess the advocate, it's not an official city group. It's similar to the CEC. So again, that was, I think that was a decision made by the group way back when, in order, because they wanted to not be able to, they wanted to have the flexibility to not work within the Brown Act. So it was called the Community BPAC at that point. So it's not under the city guise. As far as the bike ped master plan, I'll take a look at how it is on our website. I know there are certain links, like you did the walk bike burlingame.org, that gets you there, because that link now sends you back, but we'll take a look.
Yeah, it was really hard to find, and I was looking for it today. I was trying to look at the Ray Park Devereaux Drive, and like trying to find it was tough. It'd be nice to be more visible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. So let's proceed to future agenda items. I think we still have some ones that we were going to handle that are outstanding, including, speaking of the BPAC, we were going to do a joint meeting with BPAC on bike ped priorities. I believe I don't think it's a next month issue, but we were going to look at lighting on California Drive. And this is on me, I want to talk to the Planning Commission about talking about potentially doing something with them around vehicle charging, which might involve them. Is there anything else I'm not thinking of that we should consider for future agenda items? This would be the time if you want something on the agenda to suggest something. Okay.
I do have a question. Yeah, maybe for Mr. Wong. Are there any grant opportunities coming up that maybe we should be aware of?
Through the chair, we are trying to see if we were on a short list for the, they called it a quick strike opportunity. So that would allow us to do some of these bike ped, the striping and signage improvements. So we were like right on the edge of the folks that were selected, and due to our neighboring city of San Mateo getting a grant opportunity somewhere else, I think they were trying to extend it to us being the next one, but we haven't gotten official word on that. So that's where that is. And other than that, right now, we do not have any grant opportunities, but we had a handful last year that we did.
Okay.
I did want to point out one other item that I think we may try to bring to you in May that I'm sorry, I got a text from Ms. Mai regarding this. The California Drive facilities, I think we might be ready to show, some of the concepts or enhance or different concepts with that. So we may bring that to you, which will work well if next month we go with the Bike Ped Master Plan priorities, because we'll have BPAC here and I'm sure they'll have comments on that. But
That's great. One other thing I want to remember to flag is it would be also good to hear, this could maybe be done as a quick agenda item. It'd be good to hear the feedback you get on Old Bay Shore, which should have come back by next meeting.
Through the chair, yes, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, we plan to bring that to you, give you an update on that. It may not be next meeting, but we depending on how our design team's working on that one. And I extended it, so I might have heard us on that. Originally, it was supposed to be the 11th. So, but I wanted to give it another opportunity. I think of right now, there were 46 respondents. So just to give you an idea, and hopefully we'll up that number with this latest round.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, great. So with
Vice Chair Martos, sorry, has his hand up.
Sorry.
I have my virtual hand up.
Please proceed.
Sure. Sorry. So one other thing, Mr. Wong, that I'd like to get feedback on, and maybe Ms. Mai can help with this, but it's feedback that maybe you've received through the website on the Lion Hogue traffic calming measures that have taken place. I see them installed, and Commissioner Launder and Commissioner Bush and I sat on that original committee where we gave our opinions on what we thought would be helpful in the area, as well as several other people that were on that initial committee. But I'd like to hear what the public is thinking, and by now I would hope that you've received some feedback so that we can take a look at some things and maybe weigh in and see if other corrective measures could be made that are a little better. So is it possible to see what the feedback is thus far for the things that have been implemented in Lion Hogue?
Through the chair, it's funny, Miss Mai and I were just talking about that today because she was out with Mr. Sai going around Lion Hogue, and they got some additional feedback while they were out there. So yes, we plan on at least sharing some of that with you, and we've been we've actually taken some of the feedback we've received and we've been tweaking it on the fly. So we can share some of those as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So I think with that, we can close the meeting. 7:07.
I just wanted to jump in and say, Commissioner Rebellos, welcome. This is one of our shorter meetings.
No U-turns,
So
right?
Eat your Wheaties before you come to the next one.
Yeah, good advice. Yeah, I should reiterate.
It's a long meeting.
I should reiterate how happy we are to have you here, Commissioner Rebellos.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, it's no joke. These meetings do generally run 3 hours. So definitely eat dinner.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure meeting everybody, and I'm looking forward to continued work. And I really, believe it or not, I actually enjoyed the meeting. So.
Oh, that's good there. Well, I look forward to getting to know you, and thank you for stepping up. I appreciate it.
I
Okay.
appreciate the support from everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
So,
Welcome.
with that,
Thank you and welcome.
All right, have a good night, everyone.
Good
I'm
night.
gonna gavel us out.
Have a good
Meeting
night.
adjourned. Good night, everybody.